Well, a very good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Environment and Climate Change Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is taking place in the Spark and Hoe Committee Room at County Hall, Glenfield this afternoon. Though some officers will be joining us online via Microsoft Teams. This meeting is being webcast live to the public on YouTube. Please turn your microphones on when you're speaking and turn them off when you're finished, if you don't mind. Mr. Pendleton has sent his apologies, so I will be chairing the meeting today. Mr. Barclay is here as Mr. Pendleton's substitute, and we also have Mr. Dan Harrison substituting for Bertie Harrison Rushton. So a very good afternoon to you all. Folks, it's a robust agenda this afternoon, so I'm going to politely request if we can keep it being succinct and direct. And we will only offer additional scrutiny to reports that we think are essential because it's quite a big afternoon. Is that okay with everybody? Thank you very much. So let's go on to agenda item 1, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of November 2022. I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of November 2022 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Is that agreed? Yeah. Number 2, question time. Presently, I have received no questions from members of the public. Item number 3, questions asked by members under Standing Order 7.3 and 7.5. Mr. Max Hunt has submitted 6 questions, and Mr. Hunt has been provided with written answers, and the answers have been circulated and published on the website. Mr. Hunt isn't here at the moment for a response, so I'm going to move on to item number 4. Is that okay? To advise any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda. And I'd like to tell colleagues there are no urgent items. Number 5, declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. I invite members who wish to do so to make declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting. None? Thank you. Item number 6, declarations of the party whip in accordance with the overview and scrutiny procedure of Rule 16. Are there any declarations of the party whip? None, thank you. Item number 7, presentation of petitions under Standing Order 35. I have not received any petitions. Item number 7, which is water quality, Anglian Water and Severn Trent Water. I would like to extend a very warm welcome, if I may, to our visitors from Severn Trent Water and Anglian Water who are here to present for us today. So welcome, folks. Thank you very much for giving up your afternoon. And from Severn Trent Water, unless there's any amendments or changes, I have Mr. Jason Rogers. Good afternoon, sir. Head of Water Quality and Environment from Anglian Water. We also have Dr. Robin Price, Director of Quality and Environment. Thank you, Dr. Price. Linda Elliott. Hello, Linda. Regional Engagement Programme Lead. And finally, last but by no means least, Natasha Kenny, Head of Quality Regulation and Enforcement. Good afternoon. Within our agenda packs, we have the answers from the water companies to our initial questions. I'll go to Jason Rogers first. Jason, is there anything you wish to add?
Apologies, do we need to introduce?
Please do, sir. Thank you very much. Yes.
Severn Trent Water. So we have Matt Lewis, who is our non-infra business lead for this area.
Hello, Matt. Good afternoon.
Russell Clark, who's our non-infra lead for water in this area.
Good afternoon, Russell. Welcome to Leicestershire County Council.
So when we talk about non-infra, that's pipes in the floor type stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great stuff. Yeah, so I'm hoping first of all everybody's received the pack and has read the pack. And just to give you sort of a brief overview of Severn Trent Water and our role. So Severn Trent Water is a water and wastewater regulated business serving greater than 8 million customers across the Midlands. Our purpose is taking care of one of life's essentials. Within the Leicestershire region, we actually serve 1.1 million people in this area, and we employ 600 employees within the Leicestershire area, and have 20 apprentices that have started within our apprenticeship programme. We actually support around 20,000 customers in this area with our affordability scheme, specifically with some of the challenges around cost of living in this area at the moment, and have the second lowest bills in the country. So I think the affordability and service is something that's really important to Severn Trent Water from a customer perspective. And community engagement is really, really important to us as well within Severn Trent Water. So we have an education team that's engaged with sort of 83 schools in this area, so approximately 19,000 children, and taking them through the sort of water resources and challenges there. And we've also have a Severn Trent Community Fund where we actually put 1% of our profit into a community fund, and have spent around £750,000 in this area through that community fund, improving sort of areas around natural habitat or community funding type schemes. So I don't know if anybody has any sort of questions around anything around that.
Questions, Rosita?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you very, very much for not only being here, but that is a really comprehensive report, and I think I shall keep it as bedtime reading to refer to. I have got a couple of questions, and hang on, I made a quick note. Hang on. Okay, so my first question is in regards of farming practices. I know you touched on that on, I think, page 56, either one of you. It is, how do the water companies work with the farms, the NFU, because cleaning ditches and, you know, biodiversity is very, very important. Shall I ask my questions first, Chairman, and then, yeah. So that is then I would like to know how the water companies actually work with developers and local authority, and how we can enhance that working relationship, because it is very, very important, especially with all of the development, that the SUTs are right, that they're being monitored, that there is in their local plan, that there are the policies and the power to the elbow for the local authorities to be able to have policies to make the developers reuse rainwater, or, you know, have a water for leisure. Remember many years ago, if you dug a big hole for, you know, sand and gravel excavation like Europe, you know, it was use it for rainwater, surface water runoff, put some boats on it, and you know, so that, hang on, so that is one, water. Okay, and then, for instance, hate to bring it up, but in my division, I've got Magna Park. And every time I go, I see these enormous surface water runoff implements. And whenever you check it, you don't have a real long-term overview. And what happens is you have the surface water runoff, you have the SUTs there, but then the impact, and then it goes into a very small brook. They put a few bends in that brook, which, you know, is nowhere near going to hold it. It's going to cause flooding. But then the water, as it goes down the brook, eventually could potentially cause serious flooding, say, in Narborough or Leicester or whatever. So how is that dealt with? Because at the end of the day, you have got a SUT here, but then you have a long-term impact somewhere else, which is to all our detriment. So is that taken into consideration? Question. And are these SUTs monitored? And I'm almost done, Chairman. So it's water for leisure.
Mrs. Page, can I thank you very much for the
Yeah,
prologue, the prologue of the story.
I am. I know it says 4 hours. Oh, response time. I know it says 4 hours, but sometimes it's days and there's a river of water running down the roads for ages. And with that, I'm done. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Page. So thank you for the prologue of the story. I think what we're asking succinctly is what is the strategy for flooding and what is your emergency response time? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll try and answer the questions. Take them on. Try and answer the questions in order. So from a farm engagement, first of all, farm engagement is really important to us within the water industry. So I suppose from an overall perspective, if we can reduce farm runoff from a pollution perspective into raw water courses, that helps and reduces our treatment costs and the actual health of the river. So we are very invested into farmer engagement. And we have what we call a biodiversity ODI within, so there's an incentive around improving biodiversity in there. And within Severn Trent Water, we have what we call a STEPS grant programme. So we have a programme where we can award up to £30,000 to farmers to actually alter their farming practices, whether that's regenerative crop rotation, river buffers, using alternative pesticides and so on. So we have a really active engagement team through our catchment management teams and the wildlife trusts that engage with, in our area, up to 8,000 farmers that we engage with to hopefully improve the farming practices, make them more sustainable, and ultimately, from a water company perspective, try to protect the raw water to the best of possible ability so that our treatment costs are then lower. And then to quantify that from a customer perspective, we view that every pound that we invest in biodiversity actually gives us £4 worth of reward, which is either reduced treatment costs or reduced investment in concrete, chemicals, power, and so on. So we see that definitely as something that we are very active in, and across the Midlands we have a significant team that engage with them. From a new connections perspective and bringing new developments on, something that we are working quite closely with is this automatic right to connect to our network at the moment, which gives us some real challenges from a capacity perspective, both on the water supply rainwater run, etc. from new. So we see that as a real positive within the. So we have regulation around automatic right to connect and management of new property. And then just to answer your last question around the SUDs themselves, interesting topic around SUDs. There is no design standard for SUD at the moment. So within Severn Trent Water, we have what we call a scheme, which is a significant investment program, materials out of the pandemic. And one of the schemes we look at sort of flood elimination in Mansfield. So there's a significant program on in Mansfield that they're introducing, I think, in the order of 2,000 different types of SUDs in Mansfield to reduce the flood attenuation in that area. And part of that program designing specifications around types of SUDs and look at which ones are successful, which ones aren't successful. That's something that we will be sharing with the industry and regulator. That scheme. Positive news, that's gone past the point of theories to actually remedial SUDs being in as we speak.
May I just come back? So would you then advocate to have a set of prescribed SUDS regulation so it would be easier to monitor as well? And would it be requiring, and are you legally, or not legally, politically lobbying? Because it would be to the advantage of all of us, especially with all of the development going forward.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that works really well for us in the waters, and if we have any form of regulation or design standards, it just absolutely allows us to standardise and make sure that, I suppose, upstream of the water company itself, that there is a standard system of working to absolutely endorse the regulation and designs around that.
So if it's helpful. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Could I ask you, sir, if you could just angulate your microphone a little bit down? Yep. That's better. Broadcast quality.
I was just going to jump in to say, in terms of strategy for wastewater infra, our strategy a number of years ago, several tens of years ago, was to go for combined sewers. We now realise that that isn't the way forward. So dealing with rainwater at the point where it falls is the best strategy for everyone, because it prevents flooding. And that's exactly what Severn Trent is trying to do. It is costly, and obviously we need your help as well. So things like planning permission for driveways, permeable surfaces. More and more people are digging up their front gardens. More and more people are digging up their back gardens, extending their properties, capturing more water and transferring that into the sewer assets. That's causing flooding downstream.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. There was another question that Mrs. Page proposed, which was about emergency response times. Sorry.
If I hand that one over to Russ, you okay to respond to that from a leakage perspective?
So, yeah, are you referring specifically to response to clean water leaks, flooding, or sewer flooding? Just to clarify.
Well, you can talk me through all of three of them. It says sewer is 4 hours in your report, but I was more thinking, again, giving you an example. There was like a river running down in one of my villages. It was reported several times, and somebody came out, but the water kept running for, I think, 4 days. So, in general, it might have been one off, but what is the response time?
Can I just say, I'm sure it would be very engaging to hear Mr. Clark talking through all of them, but unfortunately we don't have the time. So if we could kind of give a rounded answer, so if that's okay, and subsequently anything else we will receive in writing. Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
So 4 hours is the sewer flooding. So if a customer was to call our call centre, then our aspiration is to get to that within 4 hours. If we get a call of a pollution into a river, that would be a 2-hour response time.
Excellent. I do have another question from my colleague, Mr. Harrison. Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's to do with the River Mease. I'm North West Leicestershire. My division is Ibstock and Appleby, and we have real problems. The senior planning officer told me last week at North West that it's going to be 26, 27 before the river's cleaned and we can then go back to planning. So North West is one of the fastest growing district councils in the country, and we won't be able to accept new applications. That's as simple as that. So we're in a real difficult spot, organised and going forward, and there's lots of, people have already applied, so there's allocations, but any new stuff coming in, we've got no chance. Unless you do something with Packington, because Packington's got a tank or 2 tanks in the ground, and really it needs an update because the whole area and infrastructure has grown so massively. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bolter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, interesting to see you here this afternoon. Thank you for coming. I've got 2 questions really. One is that we've got an ageing infrastructure of water pipes that seem to burst on regular occasions in my division, and I think other places as well. What's the programme for replacing those? Because you tend to repair one in one area, and a few hundred yards down the road, another one pops up. So I think replacement is necessary rather than spot repairs. So I know that's a big thing, money-wise, to actually put right. But I think it's necessary because you ask residents to stop taps dripping. You look outside and the water's running down the gutters from one of your burst pipes. So it's not very good publicity for you. The other one is, seems to be a bit of a void on the planning system with the balancing reservoirs. Our 2 takes on responsibility and the developers moved off site. Is it Severn Trent? Is it water company's responsibility? to maintain those in the long term, or do you pass that responsibility to somebody else?
Sorry, can you just clarify that last question?
Honestly, reservoirs on housing estates, who's supposed to maintain them after the developer's moved off site?
I think what we're referring to is the catchment pits of the overland flow.
Yes.
Water.
Yes.
Can I, Mr. Bolter, are we talking about road adoption here? Or are we talking about who adopts the responsibility of the pipes that are put in for clarity, for the sake of clarity?
Reservoirs themselves, when they're constructed,
I can understand your question. Yeah, so I think it's not the water industry, so we can understand that. I'm assuming that it would be sort of the local council or whoever's adopted that that housing estate.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Bolter, I do have a response from one of our senior officers, and Carruthers. Thank you.
Thank you. Just on that, if it's a new development, and sorry, if I could just come up back on Mrs. Page's question as well about the right SUDs monitoring, who ensures the right, the monitoring, and I think that then comes on to Mr. Bolter's question about ongoing maintenance of those. I'm assuming when you talk about balancing ponds, you're talking about the SUDs infrastructure for a new development. Well, we have a statutory duty, we're a statutory consultee as a lead local flood authority in planning applications. So we do have standards in terms of SUDs. I absolutely agree, there's not a national standard anywhere, but we have localised standards that we work to that we would want to see within that development. So we will comment on the planning application if the proposals are adequate, or if not, what needs to be done. When they then come on, in terms of monitoring that, is it put in right and how does it go forward? That's part of the planning consent, so that would fall to the planning authority. In terms of adoption, that will depend on who the land goes to. 99% of the time, it will not come to the local authority. We do not take that on unless it's part of the highway infrastructure. Therefore, the developer will need to set up some kind of management company that manages that on behalf of the residents. And again, we as the local authority, and think I've heard from our colleagues in the water companies, would not take that on. That's a matter for the developer to sort out on behalf of the residents going forward.
Mr. Bolter, are you satisfied with Anne's response?
Chair.
It's very, very decent of you, Mr. Bolter. Thank you very much. Mr. Barclay, thank you.
Yeah, a really comprehensive report. I think it's clear that there's a tremendous amount of work going on to cover multiple things. I mean, you're highly regulated and there is continuous improvement going on. I mean, it's not perfect, but then it's almost virtually impossible to be perfect. Is Severn Trent one of the best performers in the country among authorities, water authorities? I found it difficult. I mean, I thought the report was really comprehensive. When I started reading it, I knew absolutely nothing about water or its quality, but I certainly know a hell of a lot more now. And I was surprised at the amount of effort and resources that are put into improving things. So it's really, the question is, are you the best performing authority within the country?
Just to quickly assess that, so the regulator for us on the environment side is the Environment Agency, and the Environment Agency have an assessment framework called the Environmental Performance Assessment, the EPA framework, and within there it contains measures such as serious pollutions, consents, and on our actually sewage treatment works. Are we delivering improvement programs correctly? Things like sludge to land and so on that we generate. So there's the 6 effectively metrics that the Environment Agency measures against on an annual basis, and they publish a report then on that assessment every May, June on us as an organisation. And I'm just really pleased to say there's a huge amount of effort goes in there, that Severn Trent Water is one of the 4-star EPA. So from a 4-star perspective, this is the highest ranking you can occur within that assessment. And we've actually scored, this is our 3rd year, 2021 was our 3rd year of 4-star EPA performance, which is something we're really, really proud of as a business, and there's a huge amount of effort and hard work into that. And 2022 at this point is very draft, but it's looking very positive for 4-star EPA performance this year. So it's something we're proud of, and we actually shoot for that. We shoot for that every year, and realise that there's still absolutely more to do within our industry and within our sector and within Severn Trent.
So if I can just jump in, so water companies as they are monopolies. So I would rather than look at it in terms of a competition between the water companies in terms of who's the best and who's the worst, I'd much rather us look at it in terms of how we're performing against our targets, which is reasonably well. I think Anglian performed superbly against theirs as well. And then what we can do in terms of collaborating together, so the whole of the UK water sector becomes better rather than us as a company. So worked in the industry 20 odd years. I've done some time in innovation, and certainly if we invest as an industry, we will become better for everybody rather than as a company. So there is an element of we compete against each other in terms of comparative measures to drive the right performance and the right expenditure and make sure that we're affordable for all of our customers. But the key to this is actually collaboration.
A very diplomatic response, Mr. Lewis. Thank you very much. I'd like to now introduce another guest, if I may. Sorry, Mr. Harrison.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to hold you up, but I never got a response back reference to River Mees, and I'd be grateful for that.
I think if we take that one outside, if we take that one afterwards, we'll catch up. I'll give you my email and we'll sort out what's going on at Packington, and I'll give you some details on that one. So I'm not au fait at the moment.
Satisfied with that, Mr. Harrison? Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you very much. Oh, sorry, I've Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Chairman, because I'm the lead member, so I'm here to be scrutinised, but I can't help but listening to the debate and the responses you're offering, and I have some questions as an elected member myself. So thank you for coming today. That's good of you. Just some general questions from me, if that's okay, by you, Chair. I'll be succinct. Firstly, politically, the public is concerned about capital investment into the network. So can you just give us a short or answer towards your feelings as a company as to how much capital investment you reinvest from the profits of the water company back into the network, and what ratio of the network in Leicestershire requires improvement? It'd be helpful to understand the level of investment basically that's going in, and whether that's satisfactory to make sure that the network's in good order for the foreseeable future. Definitely.
Is that a water or a waste question?
Well, it relates to both, really. It's just an assurity that the infrastructure that supplies the water and deals with the waste is in good order, and the correct capital investment from the company is going into that.
So do you want me to jump in?
Yeah, or I'll
do
the first response. So I think first of all, our economic regulator is Ofwat, so they actually define, I suppose, the both the ambitions and the funding that we're allowed to have as an organisation. I think on the environment side, there's been some really positive steps with regards to the changes in regulation over recent years. So the Environment Act, the storm duration, storm overflow reduction plans, etc. So now that they're built into regulations, we can build up those funding cases and present them to Ofwat from a water industry perspective. That ensures that we can focus on the things that both regulation and our customers feel are quite important. So I think as we look into the next funding cycle, so we work in 5-year funding cycles, when we're starting to look into the next funding cycle for us as the water industry, that's PR24, there's a significant step change in funding for the water industry to invest in asset replacements on both the sort of water and waste side of it. So possibly doesn't ask you a question specifically around Leicester. And the things that we have to do very carefully as a water industry is balance customer bills with that, because ultimately it's the customers that generally pay for that increase in investment into our infrastructure, and we need to ensure that we get the best value solutions. And as Matt's touched on earlier, looking at innovation and different ways of solving problems in the network. So we're really active in that space of finding the right cost-effective solution to deliver the right outcome for both customers and the environment.
Mr. Lewis, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Payne, are you happy with that answer before I move on to our next question?
Well, I think it was a a very wide question that I pose, so it's very difficult without your facts, your stats, and your finances to answer. So I get the general gist that you're regulated and you submit proposals, and there will be some kind of adjudication as to whether that's satisfactory or not. But my second point is, and this is as an elected member of the Leicestershire County Council and as a division member, obviously the network requires maintenance, and that tends to be done throughout the summer months because the environment's probably better suited to those maintenance. But of course, what I find as an elected member is when you put the road closures out, etc., it tends to interrupt my communities, and I get the front end of their backlash. So I'd like to know from you how you work, or how can you work more closely with the authorities to make the maintenance, which is needed. No one's arguing that the maintenance isn't needed, but obviously the consequences and the impact of that maintenance can be better managed, perhaps, with the communities it affects.
Definitely. Now, Russ, do you want to answer that question?
I think one of the biggest things that we're trying to do in that sort of space is innovation, which is kind of what Matt's touched on earlier, and that's getting some additional sorts of kits and getting equipment that enables us to excavate and carry out our repairs much more effectively and quickly without having to close roads for such a long period of time. So that we've got things called like our like back excavators, like big vacuums, really. Like they enable us to dig a hole really quickly and make the repairs much more sooner, and then close down all the traffic management and reinstate it much more quicker. So one of the key things we're doing is much more investing in our innovative technology to reduce that impact to our customers. Because like you say, absolutely, the network needs to be maintained, and it needs to be looked after. And so yeah, that's one of the things that we're definitely doing more of.
Okay. Invited guests, forgive me, I'm going to ask you to crane your necks because we have a question coming in from Teams that's behind you. And it's from Mr. Bill, and the question is directed, I believe, to you, Mr. Rogers. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, we're members of the Highways Scrutiny Committee who are invited to join this meeting. We're grateful to be here. Could I pick up the question that I think Mr. Bolter raised, and this is that more and more estates are now being built by developers who will not be seeking the roads to be adopted, and presumably with the roads not being adopted, the sewers will not be adopted either. This means that the responsibility for maintaining these the infrastructure falls on the developer and the property maintenance company if one has been appointed. Now, what happens if the developer fails, goes under, and the property maintenance company goes under? As I'm sure this must be happening sooner or later. There's going to be a situation where there's going to be a serious failure of the infrastructure, where there's nobody in authority left responsible for sorting it out. It'll ultimately fall on the house owners, who might or might not be present. So is this a complication that's been thought through by anybody, or are we just waiting for the first case to emerge and then just take it from there, please?
Give a response on that one, Matt.
I'd say it's not us. So I guess there needs to be regulation, and that needs to be government-driven regulation on builders in order to understand that risk and what that means to the homeowner. I guess we all buy houses, or we're lucky enough to be in that position, then we take that risk when we look at that will come up on searches, etc. If it comes back to the water company to adopt those pipes, then we would obviously need to build that into our funding mechanism.
Thank you. In respect that it's a government-based issue, Mr. Bill, Mr. Lewis, I'm going to hand over to Anne. Thank you, Anne.
I'd just like to respond on behalf of the part of the Highway Authority. So if a developer comes along and does not put forward his road network and the associated drainage system for the highway water, so that's different from your sewerage and your foul water system then. If they do not put that forward for adoption, yes, we will not take on that drainage system, the highway drainage system on that. And as you're right, the developer is left with them, how they then set up a maintenance or management company going forward. And all I can assume, but it'd be a question for the planning authority, how do they then check and satisfy themselves that that will be adequate? And equally, every individual house buyer and their solicitor, I'm sure, would want to have a say about how that management would be undertaken. But there's no role for the highway authority. If a developer does not put forward its road network and the associated highway drainage for adoption, we have no role in that.
Thank you, Anne. In the interests of timing and courtesy, I am going to take one more question from Mrs. Hack, unless Mrs. Page, you feel your question is an absolute imperative. Okay, Mrs. Hack first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the information that's been brought forward in the papers. I was really pleased to see that the invite to come to scrutiny was accepted by the water companies. I think that's a really positive step forward. One of the things that the environment scrutiny do look at is obviously the quality of our river water, and there were targets that were set a little while ago, and I think those targets come from 2013, and the River Soar in particular, that improvement hasn't happened through the time when I was on the Environment and Climate Change Committee. When are we? You've obviously put lots in there in terms of your commitment to the riverways, making sure that the quality of this water is going to improve. When will that be borne out in terms of the data that's coming forward? Because that's not what we're seeing at the moment. Because there's lots of stuff in your paperwork about we are going to improve the river quality, but that isn't coming through in the data as yet. Do we know when that will come forward, please? Thank you.
Yeah, and just to respond to that question, so within Severn Trent, I'm working in partnership with Anglian Water. We have something called our sort of river pledges. So as two organisations, we've agreed a set of objectives for us, specifically around that question around what we classify as RNAGs within the water industry, so rivers not achieving good status. Around the River Soar, we've got 627 rivers that aren't achieving the RNAG status, and from a Severn Trent perspective, we are responsible for 130 of those RNAGs, so we have about 20% responsibility for them. I can give you a commitment and provide you further follow-up information, but by 2030, which is ahead of the regulatory targets, we've actually committed as an organisation to remove all RNAGs across the Severn Trent region. So we have a time-bound plan and for that, and I can follow up with more detail if it helps around the 130, the plans that we have between now and 2025 in the pack. We do have a trajectory of the number of those improvements and the reduction in those RNAGs that we are responsible for. And I think it was one of the asks that we have of this forum is how you help us influence agriculture, industry, highways to focus on the other 80%, because ultimately we look at the catchment rather than individual water courses. So we have to take a catchment approach around all sectors that are affected that water course.
That would be really
helpful. Are you
helpful.
satisfied with that, Mrs. Hack?
Yes, thank you for that. That was really
helpful.
Thank
you. I am, before we move on to Dr. Price, I will allow one succinct and short question from Mrs. Page. Thank you.
Thank you. It will be. Quick comment is you responded to Blake that there are innovative methods to be better with the repairs, because we do have a constant, residents getting on at us, but it isn't actually the work Severn Trent or Anglian does. It's sometimes the other contractors by putting up traffic lights and not removing them for a week, or the hole being left open. Now that is just a comment. My question is, and to leave with you, on page 58, you're saying you're very much open to partnership working with the county council, and there's a lovely little email, public at affairs, where we can all respond to. But really, and I'm sad that we are rushed for time, unfortunately, doing circumstances, and I do hope you come back at one point, because there's so much we can discuss. But for me, it is, how do you see this partnership working to be of benefits all around? What can we do? Because if you are listening to Anne just now, we're having a process at our end and there's a process at your end. So how can we dovetail it? How can you work with our officers to ensure that everything is working? So I don't want you to go away without telling me that we can put something on record, how we can positively go forward, because that would be really, really advantageous. Thank you.
Mr. Page, please excuse the imposition. That's a very loaded question, in my opinion, and you have put Mr. Rogers on the spot.
But
somewhat.
that's why we are scrutineers.
In précis, Mr. Rogers, if you would, sir, thank you.
Maybe again, Russ, I'm not sure if it's something.
Mr. Lewis, thank you.
Management or.
So I don't have an answer to how we're going to work better with you, but I think this is the first step in that journey. So I know recently one of my teams had a problem over in Melton, and we've certainly got a lot better working relationship. And I think it's all about knowing who the right people are to talk to, and then understanding how we can collaborate better. So, and I think that's both a Severn Trent point of view and other utilities that take up that place in the highway. So I would agree with you in terms of we don't collaborate brilliantly across all the sectors that can dig in the highway and do dig in the highway, and that frustrates motorists and frustrates our customers as well as obviously they come to you. So hands up, we could do a better job. It would be great if you can help us to understand how we can do that better job and get all of those parties around the table.
Well, Mr. Lewis, I can tell you some certainty. I know all about the problems in Melton, mate. 103 emails of them.
I also have a bill.
You've got our director right here.
Moving swiftly along. Thank you very much, and I reiterate what Mrs. Hack and my colleagues have said. Thank you very much, Severn Trent, for, we hope we haven't scared you off. We hope this is the beginning of something fruitful and meaningful. So thank you very much for joining us at County Hall this afternoon. I would like to now introduce the Anglian Water Authority. We had a brief chat over at the coffee. Dr. Price. Very, very good afternoon to you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chair and everybody. So I resisted the opportunity to kind of jump in because there are a couple of things I'd like to just build and everything. So I'll just give a brief introduction to Anglian Water and our Leicestershire context and our organisation. And then I've just got a couple of bills and a couple of comments on some of the things we've talked about, particularly SUDS, for example. So Anglian Water, whilst we're the largest water company geographically, we actually have quite a small footprint in Leicestershire. So we don't supply an awful lot of drinking water. We are very much the other water company in your county behind Severn Trent. But we still provide drinking water services to parts of the east of the county, and we provide wastewater, water recycling services to some fairly large areas, for example, Market Harbour and that particular area as well. So we're not insignificant kind of thing. So really, really pleased to be invited to come along today to speak to you. Our purpose as an organisation, we're both purpose-led organisations, and as has been said by my colleagues on Severn Trent, we're not in competition with each other, and we are collaborating. And some of the work we're doing around river water quality through Get River Positive is absolutely showing the strong collaboration, and we collaborate particularly strongly with Severn Trent, given the board doesn't given our size. So by working together, we can cover an awful lot of geography and learn a lot together, which is fantastic. In terms of the kind of the environment, this is the Environment Scrutiny Committee. This is something which really has is very much in the public's consciousness through lockdown, through COVID. We as society have become much more connected to the environment. We had an hour a day to get out. Where are we going to head? We're going to head for rivers, fields, green spaces, and just for our well-being, for our mental and our physical well-being. So as a society, we have noticed the environment around us much more effectively. So when you go to the river and the river isn't there, you wonder, well, who's abstracted that? Who's taken it? You go to the river and there's stuff in it, you wonder, well, who put that stuff there, kind of thing. So this real step change in kind of environmental, we've always worked in we've always invested billions as an industry in the environment, but a real step change in our focus and our conversation, and and engaging with local authorities on this topic is an absolute top priority for our organisation and also for Severn Trent. The environment and kind of our impact on the environment. I mentioned kind of abstraction, so water resources, so water quantity is a huge issue. We carry out, you'll see in our responses, our process around our water resource management plans. A huge focus on that is leakage, which has been talked about today. Again, we asked about comparative measures. Who's the best? Again, I agree, it doesn't matter, but we're quite good at leakage and Anglian Water kind of thing, because we're the driest region. So we get less rainfall than Jerusalem across East Anglia, less so as we get into the East Midlands. So it is an absolute imperative that we don't waste that water. This is absolutely incumbent on us. So leakage is a huge part of our environmental strategy. Reducing flood risk is a huge part of that strategy, but the water quality bit, which I know is one of the headline hitters at the moment, certainly is a key focus. The way we plan, as Jason said, around in 5-year chunks, and our environmental investment program is done through a thing called the Water Industry National Environment Program. So we are currently delivering for the period 2020 to 2025. As Anglian Water alone, we're investing £811 million into the environment across East Anglia, including parts of Lincolnshire. Now there's a breakdown in our response, specifically what's going into the county here. This is our largest WINEP. Our largest WINEP is the largest in the industry because of some of the habitats, some of the work we have to do. The WINEP we're developing now, and all of us are heavily up to our elbows in developing the WINEP for the period 2025 to 2030, is likely to be a step change again in terms of investment. So the water industry, please be under no illusion that the water industry is absolutely investing billions of pounds into the environment. And I'm not sure if I'm aware of any other single organisation investing £811 million into the environment in a 5-year chunk. So we're very proud of our kind of environmental work, but we're not perfect. We're not perfect, and you'll see the headlines, and there's a lot more work we can do. And we absolutely recognise the only way we're going to deal with the challenges is by working in partnership. So it's just fantastic that the last question on your list and the conversation today is how can we work in partnership with yourselves and many other stakeholders to deliver improvements. We are trying to take in terms of our planning, we are trying to take a nature first strategy. So how would nature solve that problem, be what it is? We are facing a climate crisis and a biodiversity crisis. So by thinking around nature-based solutions and how we can take nature, a nature-first solution is going to be absolutely critical. And just building on some of the conversations around working with farmers and landowners, the way land is managed has a profound impact on the outcomes with regard to water. So we cannot do anything other than work with farmers and landowners. And there's a question around the Environment Act and kind of what opportunities. The Environment Act is just the most astonishing, amazing piece of legislation, in my opinion, because it offers so many more opportunities to work with farmers, work with landowners to collaborate around wetlands, SUDs, other nature-based solutions, just working, to improve water quality, improve flooding resilience and water quantity. So we have very strong relationships across Severn Trent and Anglian with farmers. On SUDs and surface water management, if I can just go a step further and be so bold as to say, I think, so from Anglian Water perspective, I'll look nervously at Severn Trent, we would love to adopt SUDs. We would love to adopt these. We'd love to be involved right at the planning stage, right in the planning stage as we design through placemaking, as surface water is managed. We think at the design stage and we operate, and we have the opportunity to discuss who's going to do this through the newly appointed SUDs approval bodies. You will have seen this through, as has been mentioned, Schedule 3 of the Flood and Water Management Act has been enacted, has gone through. So developers don't have an automatic right to connect, and SUDs are mandatory on new developments. Well, what an exciting opportunity to really think about how we work together at the design stage. Because the answer at the moment, so a quarter of that £800 million, a quarter of that money currently we are spending as Anglian Water on storm tanks, on gathering every drop of surface water that lands in the catchment, allowing it to come through through in some place an overloaded sewage system, and then we're storing it within our water recycling centres, our sewage works. So essentially, we are saying it's okay for all of that surface water through these impermeable driveways, astroturf lawns, etc., to just find its way through and find its way. And basically, what we're then doing is building a blooming great concrete tank and storing it right next to the river that we're trying to protect, or for Anglian Water, we have coastline. On the beach, we're trying to protect. That is not the right answer in any way, shape or form. We've got to keep surface water out of the system. We do not want to be, I do not want us to be building storm tanks at the rate that we're doing now, quarter of our programme to do that, to manage surface water, when there are opportunities for collaboration to kind of work around this. So if the right answer over the planning period is the right answer, instead of us building a concrete storm tank, we invest in a nature-based solution, SUDs, swales, we work together with you, and that becomes our asset to maintain, look after. But that's saved customers money, that's delivered greater things for the environment, it's helped us get to net zero on climate change. Well, that's probably the right answer, isn't it, kind of thing. So we really welcome the opportunity to have that sort of conversation with you moving forward. It isn't automatic that we'll adopt them all, but let's have the conversation right at the planning stage and see what we can do. My very final point, before I allow some, very welcome some questions, is around partnership working. Again, yeah, we work in partnership with local authorities, with farmers, with landowners. We're also doing some very interesting partnership work in Market Harborough with the West Mercia Rivers Trust. And we've actually provided some significant funding around river restoration for the River Welland. So we're doing some work immediately downstream of our Market Harborough site around river restoration, which is around morphology change. You know, the River Welland, in places, a lot of our rivers are canalised. They're very straight. They are designed to, you know, in the days when water was regarded as a problem to be got rid of, just get that water in the North Sea as fast as you can. So we are meandering the river. We're working on water quality improvements at our site, etc. But also working, working through with the Harborough Woodland community, volunteers around the role of trees and other nature-based solutions. So, and that is just one example that Jason, Tash, myself, we could spend the whole afternoon talking about some of the partnerships we're doing around nature-based solutions. So it's pretty my intro, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
No, Dr. Price, that was a very compelling commentary. Thank you very much. And it's nice to hear nature-based solutions in there. That's refreshing to hear that. Just before we actually take some questions from our panels, the £811 million that you allude, what would you suggest? I know you mentioned it partially, but where's the bias of that going to manifest? What does that look like? What are you planning to invest with your 811 million? Other than concrete water tanks?
Yeah, so there's a breakdown in our slide deck. So I'll just refer to that very quickly. So a lot of it is around storm tanks. A lot of it is around investment in nutrient reduction. So in terms of the water industry's impact on the environment, there's an awful lot of, absolutely there's a kind of public outrage around kind of sewage spills, but from an environmental impact, the greater impact comes from abstraction, removing water from rivers, and also the reintroduction of nutrients, so phosphate and nitrogen, but particularly phosphate. So a huge focus for us is how do we have sustainable abstraction? We are further into East Anglia, across Norfolk. We are having abstraction licenses. Cambridgeshire abstraction licenses are being cut by the Environment Agency, and you may have seen we've recently announced the location of two new enormous reservoirs to the size of Rutland Water, which supplies a bit of Leicestershire. So one in South Lincolnshire and one in the Cambridgeshire Fens, not far from where I live. So we are looking to kind of capture, investment, through our water resource management planning, capture flood water that will be lost to the sea, storing it and using it on a drier day. A lot of work is going in. So phosphorus reduction is a big element of our programme, and it will be the same for Severn Trent as well. So to reduce the nutrients that cause proliferation of kind of plant growth and kind of just to destroy the cause eutrophication and can destroy the biodiversity. A lot of work in our region around our coastline, around bathing water quality, a lot of work around sustainable drainage solutions. But a big chunk of our funding is around monitoring. So understanding even further what is going into the environment, what the quality, the quantity, etc. And when we have overflows or activations, how many of those we're having.
Thank you, Dr. Price. So we can leave with some assurance that some of the 811 million will be in nature-based solutions.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
And in the current planning, even more will be.
Thank you, Dr. Price. Mr. Bolter.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it's for both authorities, actually. Massive amount of new house building going off within Leicestershire. I don't know if you've built any more sewerage plants to cope with that, but can you cope with extra houses that are being built with existing capacity? And if so, fine. If not, what are you going to do about it? But general thing that we've always talked about is sewage flowing into rivers when you have storms. What can we do about that? Can you increase capacity within the sewage works so you don't have discharge into rivers? Or can we separate out the storm water from the foul water at an earlier date? When in my division, we've still got combined foul and storm. Which doesn't help anybody. But I don't think there's any move to actually separate that out in the near future anyway. A lot of houses were Victorian built houses, and it didn't seem to bother in those days. It all went down the same brick sewers on the way to the river. In my division, we've got the sewage works at South Wixton, which to my mind is has not changed now in my lifetime. It's still the same size now as it was then, yet we've got 3 times as many houses as we did when it was built. And I can't understand how it can still cope with that amount of sewage going into it that wasn't there before. We've got the one at Oby as well, which doesn't seem to be as busy as it was, but I don't know where the capacity is.
Dr. Price, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah.
Would you like to share your answer with Mr. Rogers?
I'll very quickly go for just introduce and then absolutely hand over to Jason. So in terms of the planning, I mentioned our Water Industry National Environment Programme, our WINEP. Another one of our mega strategies, if you like, is our Drainage and Wastewater Management Plan, where this which is a sister plan to our Water Resource Management Plan, and we've put our DWMPs out for consultation. This is essentially kind of an inventory of our sewerage network and the capacity that we have, and it looks at kind of just what hydraulic capacity, how much water sewage can we kind of hold in the network as it is at the moment. It then looks forward in terms of working with local authorities at kind of growth plans. How much growth can we expect and where and when? But it also looks at climate change scenarios as well. So it looks at kind of as the world has got rather stranger, it's no longer a wet winter, dry summer. It's either a bit wet or it's extremely hot, then there's a thunderstorm. So the climate change is a big layer that kind of goes over this. So that's the process, and the £811 million of investment is set in the context of a £6.5 billion investment plan. So there'll be another hundreds of millions of pounds going into that. On the capacity piece, that's what I was just talking around whilst we need to, there are places we need to expand the capacity in terms of our ability to treat. What we'd rather do, particularly in these combined systems, is keep the rainwater out. That's the idea. So, keep the rainwater out. The bill nationally, there are many headlines around, what it would cost to dig up the streets and replace and have this, go back to kind of go to kind of a foul system and a surface water system. Technically, financially, we're a long way away from that. The first place we've got to go is keeping surface water out of the system in the first place. We've done some work in the town of March, a town in Cambridgeshire, where we found that 25% of all of the buildings in the town of March are connected to the wrong system. So along with 425 highways, gullies, along with 25 car parks, so this idea of misconnections is an enormous one. So that's the first place we've got to go in collaboration, and we're doing that through our DWMP and our investment programs. But and on spill reduction, just very, very quickly, I know Jason wants to come in, I'm sure. On spill reduction, there are 3 reasons why sewer overflows, why spills occur, if you like. The first one is if there's a problem with our pumps, our assets, our pipes. That's our job to just sort that out. The second reason they go off is the activations happen and spills happen is because of blockages in the sewerage network. The main cause of blockages in our network are the wrong things being put down the toilet or down the sink, particularly wet wipes and particularly fats, oils and greases. So, and you combine lovely bunch of wet wipes and some fats, oils and greases, and before you know it, you have a fatberg the size of a blue whale kind of thing. So we've got to work to educate the public around what can and can't go down the foul sewer. The third reason is surface water, is overloaded surface water, which I've talked about quite enough.
Thank you, Dr. Price. I hope you don't feel we're hastening you for your answers.
No. Sorry for speeding up.
No, not at all. Mr. Rogers, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just to really build on that, so the drains and wastewater management plans are something relatively new for us as an organisation. So we're going through the first iteration to that, but that will become a regulatory requirement to build capacity into the network. I think just to give you an example of scale, so our sort of sewer systems generally have a factor of 6 to cope with surface water ingress into them. So typically we have a volume or a factor of 6 that we can increase capacity across the network within, which gives you an idea of the scale of the surface water issue. And just to give you some reassurance sort of, in this area at the moment, so Melton Mowbray, we're just going through an expansion on that sewage treatment works, which is £35 million worth of investment. And also Hinkley to Hartsill is another scheme that's worth around £70 million that we invest in both of those sewage treatment works to improve capacity to deal with population growth and so on. But back to Robin's earlier point, the ambition has to be to remove surface water from the network.
Yeah. Mr. Bolter, before I go to Ms. Kenny, are you satisfied with what you've heard from our guests?
To a degree, yes, but still, housing built over the last 30 years. capacity in the two nearest series works. Unless you're miles further away, I don't know. But in my area, there's two series working.
Could I ask Mr. Rogers or Dr. Price to actually perhaps respond in writing back to that, or if there's a proposal for change? Is that all right, Mr. Bolter?
And if there are any very specific localities that we can respond about plans in particular areas.
Thank you, Dr. Price. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Kenny, thank you.
Mr. Bolter, I just wanted to respond a bit further on some of the challenges we face with storm overflows. So we've been installing event duration monitors since the last AMP, and these monitors have been retrofitted to existing sewer network. And one of the biggest challenges we found is that, and what we've started using as terminology, is the number of times these event duration monitors activate. And an activation doesn't always mean that a spill has occurred. We are seeing quite a lot of interference with fat oils and greases and rags getting into our sewers. They catch up on the devices, and we will go out and investigate our highest spilling storm overflows and find that some of the devices have been caught up with debris in the sewer. So we're reporting them as spills, but they're not actually spills, they're just activations. We're working really closely with the Environment Agency and setting up a verification process so that we can actually understand more about the devices and improving accuracy of spills. But we can say at this stage, and with the information and reports that we've had back so far, is that about a third of our spills are actually false spill events. They're not true spills. So we're trying to address the external factors on accurate monitoring, but we're also trying to build a kind of nice, clear verification process to remove these non-spill events so that they're a true reflection of what's being discharged to the environment.
Thank you, Ms. Kenny. And again, if there's anything specific that's relevant or indigenous to Mr. Bolter's area, or indeed any of our members' areas, if you could let us know, that would be really useful. We don't appear to have any additional questions online. Mrs. Page, we do have a question from you. Thank you.
And okay.
And Mr. Payne, is it a joint question?
No. We haven't conferred. It's been too interesting to listen and to store all of this information. I have to apologise because all my previous question and things were really, to both water authorities. But Dr. Price is, telling me all the wonderful things I like to hear, keeping rainwater out, looking at misconnections, and it looks at lobbying to stop the right to connect. And I think you've answered that just now, because you talked about monitoring, and I assume that is the monitoring you were talking about, or is there other monitoring you do? That is number one. The other thing it is also that in monitoring, do you actually, I have to just explain. So say, for instance, I've got a little river and I'm teaching Granny to soak eggs, and the river level is here, my drains are here, surface water goes up the drains, blocks the hole, water goes up, and whatever. So do you actually do also the monitoring of the surface water runoff, because it does actually interfere with the system and causes problems? It's just, for mine. And another small comment is there seems to be a lot of paperwork going out, stop your tap dripping and whatever. But many years ago, there were marketing events and people handed out traps and things like that. And I haven't seen that because it was really handy. I remember having lots of fat traps, especially around Christmas, putting all my fat in. Now I have to store up jars and put the fat into, old jars. So are you still doing initiatives like that? Because it's no good telling me, don't put any fat down the sink, if there is no way the public is educated, and unless they have seen it like us firsthand, where there are these big clogging of fat down the drains, etc. And thank you again.
Okay, so let's just succinctly, are you doing the monitoring of the water surfacing, and are you planning any public relations campaigns?
Just very briefly on the monitoring. So the big focus has been around kind of event duration monitoring on spill locations. The other area we're investing very heavily as Anglian Water, I'm not quite sure on Severn Trent, is on actually monitoring of our network, of our wastewater network, for things like pressure, so we can actually tell when a blockage is starting to occur. So rather than waiting until the sewer is blocked and we have a problem, actually getting ahead and looking at kind of what is the normal pressure and flow in that sewer, and then say, oh, there's something odd going on here. We need to go out and get ahead of that. So this is investment at spill locations, but also investment on the network itself. And yes, we are still doing PR campaigns.
Stop dripping taps. Do you remember that?
Fat traps, all sorts of stuff. Yeah,
that's exactly the same within Severn Trent Water. The EDM monitors, we have 2,500 that have been rolled out onto the network. So the analogy I'll use, it's like you can now have a speedometer in your car, and we can actually understand the network and exactly things like the River Severn backing into the network and re-engineer that back out then. So we are definitely managing that.
Dr. Price, Mr. Rogers, thank you. I profusely apologise to my colleague, Mr. Chapman. Sorry, Mr. Chapman, slightly hijacked there, sir. Your question, thank you, before we go to Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is very simple. A lot of other organisations we deal with have a dedicated council email address for us to contact you. Is that something you two organisations, which normally sort of like councillor at Severn Trent, so you know that that's coming from a council where we've probably had 20 phone calls regarding the same thing, so you get one email regarding a fault you might have, rather than receiving 20 individuals from members of the public? Because a lot of other organisations do have that facility. So that is to both of you.
If I could just bring Linda in. This is Linda's role. So Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you very much. Yes, we do. We have an email address, public.affairs@Anglian Water, which myself and the rest of the team have. You can email us on, and we will look into those issues for you and get back to you as soon as possible. So all councillors can email us on that address.
Thank you, Miss O. What we'll do is we'll perhaps ask one of the officers to circulate that amongst us. That's it.
Yes.
There we are, page 58 of the report.
I'm also happy to go further than that. So Linda and her colleague in our regional engagement team are essentially set up. We're very happy for you to have contact details so that you've got a direct line in. We don't want you waiting to kind of, we want you to be able to come straight into organisations. So we can share, there's generic mailbox and everything, but what Linda's role and colleagues is to have a direct relationship with you. So when you've got a problem, we've got that direct line, given the importance of your stakeholders.
Mr. Chapman, are you satisfied with those?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Rather than a public one, some of the other organisations have a direct one for councillors, which is separate to the public one, so that we normally get a response quicker and we can reply to our people quicker. So you're not flooded with lots of public email, that we've taken care of it and we can get that out there to the general public.
So within Severn Trent, we have Salisbury Grand Political Affairs team that we can actually link you to sort of escalate any significant issues in the network as well, so we can pick out on site.
Mr. Chapman, Mr. Rogers, Dr. Price, thank you. We don't seem to have any questions from our colleagues offline, so the last question I'm going to take, I assume you feel quite bamboozled, colleagues, but you feel the questions very well. Mr. Payne, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you to both companies and representatives for being so straightforward, honest and candid about, the affairs. It's a lot more complex than perhaps any one of us may have thought, and certainly the residents that we represent. Just as lead member, and there's so many things we could talk about, and we could spend the whole day, and even that wouldn't be enough. But just as lead member for the environment role here at Leicestershire County Council, just two thoughts. One, I know that you've got the similar targets to Leicestershire County Council in terms of reducing your CO2 emissions, etc. Can I just ask, what's the biggest challenge there for you guys, so we can probably, self-learn and share some experiences here? What's the biggest challenge in reducing your CO2 emissions as an entity, and how you dealing with that? And secondly, just on this £800 million investment, can I just ask for my own benefit, is that coming through bills that are being paid by consumers, or is that coming from grants from government? So is that investment basically coming from the consumer or grants?
So the second one's really easy. Bills, that's coming through consumers. So again, the business planning process is we develop an investment plan. We take that to Ofwat, our economic regulator, having done an awful lot of work every 5 years, and say this is the amount we want to invest. Divide that by the number of customers, and that gives the change in water bills that will be required to accommodate that. So absolutely. And just speaking from Anglian Water perspective on net zero, so yeah, we've got a net zero pathway. I chair our carbon neutrality steering group, and we've committed to being net zero by 2030. A lot of it is increasing the level of renewable energy, reducing our electricity footprint, buying renewable energy, green energy on the market rather than brown energy. The biggest, they're all things that have been decarbonising our fleet and things. The biggest challenge for us is the continued scientific evidence, particularly around wastewater treatment processes. So wastewater treatment processes emit greenhouse gases. And we are still learning internationally. This isn't an Anglian, a Severn Trent, a UK, a Leicestershire problem. This is a global problem kind of thing. So, and the data, the evidence keeps coming through. So what this then affects is then our offsetting strategy. So how much offsetting do we need to do? What's our role in carbon markets to understand how much we need to do? So what we're hoping is kind of as we learn more, with a big focus on nature-based solutions, we're kind of solving our own problem, if you like, by increasing the level of nature. But that's the thing that's kind of keeping me most awake on our net zero journey. But Jason,
I think within Severn Trent we have a similar triple carbon pledge 2030 sort of net zero. I think just as a factory, Lisa, we create 51% of the energy within Severn Trent Water from our waste process. So we basically break down our biosolids, either gas back into the grid, or convert that into electricity, which I think is a huge option for us. And along to 2030, we will generate 100% of our electricity within Severn Trent Water. And I think back to sort of Robin's comment then, really, that I think innovation for us is the real challenge. We do create emissions, sort of category level 1s and 2s, really, from our processes. We have a site that we've identified by 2024 that will be net zero. So it's a site down in Worcester. And there's a huge amount of innovation on how do we capture nitrous oxide, greenhouse gases through the processes, and create effectively our ambition of a net zero site by 2024. Then there will be the scalability challenge around how do you finance that and scale that up across the water industry. But again, that's something that we will share with the industry. So some good ambitions there. I think it's Robin's point really is around the regulation and funding, I suspect. That'll be the challenge.
I should be very clear, of course, offsetting is the last resort. We want to reduce the emissions first, kind of thing. So we're trying to reduce our offsetting burden, but as I say, increasing the amount of nature hopefully starts to get us on that trajectory. But yeah, absolutely, offsetting is the last resort.
As lead member, Mr. Payne, you happy with those responses? Colleagues from Severn Trent and Anglia, on behalf of Leicestershire County Council and our elected members, we'd like to thank you very much for the time that you've committed to us this afternoon. It was very insightful, and thank you. We hope you don't feel, as I say, too bamboozled. And I get the feeling that you're quite happy to receive any other petitions, requests, or any information as and when we require it. It's been brilliant, so thank you very much.
Sorry.
They're still working.
Colleagues, we're just going to have a slight chair reshuffle, if that's okay. Thank you. Members, colleagues and officers, if we can reconvene, I'd like to draw your attention to pages 71 to 88, which is the medium-term financial strategy 2023 to 24, 26 to 27, Director of Environment and Transport, Director of Corporate Resources. For this item, we have Cabinet Lead Member Blake Payne, the Director of Environment and Transport, and the Finance Business Partner, Susan Baum. You should have received a separate document which sets out the order in which the questions on the report will be taken. Thank you. Are we going over to Mr. Payne first?
Thank you, Chairman. Let's assume that members have read the paper, and if I, need to mop up anything at the end, I'll speak then, if that's okay.
No problem. Thank you. Anything? Mr. Hunt. And welcome, Mr. Hunt.
And I'm very pleased to be here, Mr. Frisbee. Forgive me if this isn't the right place on the agenda. I didn't receive the paper, and I'm working from a home device here. But yes, I put down a question concerning the saving that we're going to be making on the residual waste contract, which is all to the good. But when I received the answer, it seemed to me that there are a lot of unknowns in it, in the sense that the Barden transfer station had a cost saving, or instigated a cost saving.
Mr. Hunt, I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir. Is this about the MTFS directly, about the medium-term financial strategy?
Yes.
Okay.
Because in the MTFS there's a £900,000 saving, nearly £1 million, and so my question is basically, what risks are there in not achieving that saving, and what does it depend upon? Is that okay for you?
That's okay. Yeah.
Chairman, can I just say I have no problem with the director responding to Mr. Hunt's question, but although I had nothing to say right at the front end of this agenda item, may I suggest that the director takes us through the report so we all understand what's in the report, and it might answer some questions that might be on members' minds.
That would be the more prudent chronological order in which to address things. Thank you. Are you happy to do that? Thank you.
Perhaps actually then I could come on to Mr. Hunt's question in the section of the, the savings section of the report, if that's all right, Mr. Hunt. Okay, if we just start off, as say this sets out the MTFS, the 4-year period for the environment, waste and the green agenda remit. So looking at proposed revenue budget for that remit, table 1 under paragraph 5 sets out that position for the 4-year period. So you can see for the coming financial year, 23-24, the net position is 33.5 million. The gross, just for your information, there is a gross position of 37.8 million, and that's because we get various grants and income in. Over the MTFS period, we do see a slight decrease in the budget down to 32.6 million, but nothing major, just a slight decrease there. Paragraph 8 of your report shows the breakdown of spend for the coming year across the different departments, because you see this remit does not sit just all within the E&T, although the vast majority is. There's other services there under Chief Execs and Corporate Resources. The Chief Exec spend in the growth unit relates to corporate cross-cutting and external work on the net zero agenda, which supports the work that's directed by the environment strategy, the Council's environment strategy. In terms of just one last thing on this section, and then I'll stop if there's any questions, Chair, on that, if that's helpful. In terms of transfers for the budget area, these relate to inflation costs across our waste operation, both in terms of the cost of delivery of that and our contract inflation as well. So, impacts pay awards too. I'll pause there just quickly to see if there's any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anne. Mr. Bolter, in terms of order of chronology, you did raise your hand. Is now the appropriate time to ask what you wanted to ask, sir?
Yes, I'm going by memory because I'm not got a computer. Actually, you've got a computer, so I'm going by memory.
Mr. Bolton, I ask you to turn your microphone on. I apologise, colleagues, and I
Sorry.
apologise to those online as well.
So I don't know if we can ask the cabinet member to perhaps go back to cabinet and ask you, is it possible to leave that in the budget? £40,000 is a small amount of the total overall money for the county council. Also, I noticed that in there you've got the credits reduced to voluntary bodies and local authorities. I didn't know that credits were still being paid to local authorities and charities, so perhaps that can be explained. And the other thing I noticed that the tree planting budget finishes next year. Perhaps the director could answer why that's finishing next year. And as we're committed to plant a tree for every resident in the county, how far have we gone down with that programme? And if we don't have any extra money after next year, how are we going to complete that programme? Are you going to rely on other bodies to plant the trees, not yourselves? I know there's £100,000 in for a tree nursery, but that will take a number of years to actually produce trees of a suitable size to put out in the community. So there's just three things I can remember from the grants. If you could forgive me for that.
Mr. Bolter, the only thing that I would slightly protest is getting drawn into this committee into discussion around Shire grants, because I'm not entirely sure that's appropriate for this meeting.
It's on the agenda, Chair.
Okay. Mr. Payne.
I can attempt to answer some of the questions. I understand where Mr. Bolter's coming from, but the reality is, and we've discussed this at previous scrutiny meetings, that the authority is being tasked with making some significant savings and every department's affected. And you'll see from the proposals before you that the bulk of the savings from the portfolio that I currently lead will be coming from future residual waste strategy, reduced disposal costs. So the officers worked extremely hard to find better contractual positions to deliver the bulk of the savings in the department. In terms of the smaller savings, I understand where Mr. Bolter's coming from, but I can make the same argument about tree planting. I can make the same argument about our tree agenda, etc. Small amounts of money for relatively large impacts out in the community. And what we've managed to do is preserve some of those funding pots, albeit they are small, to do with trees, etc. But there's only so much capital that we've got to spend. And unfortunately, when it comes to Shire grants, it's like you've said, Mr. Chairman, it's not totally within the gift of this portfolio, as the community's portfolio, which sits under the Chief Executive's department, administers the monies for Shire grants. Having said that, it will impact on the environment Shire grants, which does have a very strong relationship with the portfolio that's under scrutiny at the moment.
Mr. Bolter, I apologise. If you were talking specifically about the environment Shire grants, I apologise. I thought you meant the generic community and VCS sector. Would you accept my apologies on that, sir? Thank you. Mr. Hunt, I apologise. We sort of cut across you early doors there. Is there anything additional that you wanted to add, sir?
I can just add on to the point that Councillor in the corner there, I think £40,000 probably less than the allowance that a good cabinet member gets. So perhaps if the cabinet was reduced by 1 or 2 members, we could probably fit it in. But you probably haven't been thinking about that one. But as far as the major item, up to £1 million of savings on the residual waste contract, I'm not sure if the director was going to come to that in her address. So I'll come to it after that, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Anne.
If I address then, I may as well just now Mr. Bolter's question and Mr. Hunt's question, if that's all right, so pick up. So the credits, the reuse and recycling credits, there is a very small allowance still for those to go for waste that is not directed by us. There is a small amount out there, things like textiles, bric-a-brac, think about bring banks, etc., that goes to tends to be districts or charities, for instance. So that's why there's a reference there to reuse and recycling credits. In terms of tree planting, you note the 100,000 for the nurseries. There's also a capital allocation, and we would have come on to that further down in the report. I think it's 47,000 next financial year, and that's for tree planting itself. Where we get that, that's been successful grant funding, a couple of different funding streams under the Forestry Commission, and we will be continuing to bid. And you quite rightly have noticed that there isn't any provision in the capital tables of the MTFS for future years, because we will continue to bid and hopefully be successful to achieve money to continue the tree planting. In terms of the target, we have 700,000 trees. That was set over a 10-year period, and it isn't only just trees. We, as LCC, facilitate through that money. It's for other organisations, community groups, charities, etc. That will contribute to the number as well. So it's not relying on funding coming through us wherever we get that to deliver on that commitment. How we're doing on our trajectory to the target, as I say, we had set a timeline of 10 years for that, i.e. 70,000 a year. And at the moment, if we keep going on the existing trajectory we're at, we reckon we could hit that in 6 to 7 years. But, there's a long way to go on that. So at the moment, we are ahead of our trajectory. If I come on to Mr. Hunt's question about it's 980,000 saving for that future residual waste. The vast majority of that, 90% of that, is down to the contractual arrangements we're putting in place that will come into operation from April this year. We get those savings from the gate fees at that, and from the haulage, the saving of the haulage, because that's a facility in county, whereas prior to this we've had to take it externally, etc. The other aspect, the smaller, under 10% of that saving, comes from the fact we've now got our own Bardon waste transfer station, and that's saving us putting that out to third parties, external parties, and paying for that. You asked the question, and I might ask my colleague Vicky to come in there as well. What about the risks on that? About the certainty of that. I mean, obviously, one key thing is about your tonnages through that contract, and there's an awful, and we will come on in the next item, the resources and waste strategy. Some of the things government are proposing, extended producer responsibility, bottle return, that kind of thing will change the makeup of the residual waste stream. Food waste collection, for instance, obviously is one that's been in the news very recently. They are the things that will change our waste stream. However, what I would say is this contract, it has taken, at least 3 years to put in place. We all know it's been a long, long time. And we had, we kind of knew these things were coming over the horizon, so there was likely to be changes. So it has been set up to enable us to have flexibility, knowing that there was these type of changes coming from government, albeit we don't know the exact detail and we don't know the exact dates. I don't know if Vicky has got anything to add to that. No, I think she's saying no. So thank you, Chair. I'll stop there.
Mr. Hunt, Mr. Bolter, are you satisfied with that response? Is there anything you'd like to add, sir?
Jim should know by now, I'm never satisfied, but I tend at the
part
present
of the course, yeah.
I've had great respect for the director, and I'm glad she's back.
Thank you. Colleagues, members, is there anything that anybody would like to add? Mr. Bolter?
Yes. Go back to Cabinet and ask if there's any way that could be retained or in a small amount, because it is important for the local communities to have something they can actually bid for and actually do something in the local community.
Mr. Payne, just before you answer that, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think, isn't that still being debated? That hasn't. There's no conclusion to that discussion yet, as yet, or is there, sir? I don't know.
Well, as far as the short answer is the discussion, the debate at this meeting will be a matter of record, and that will be fed to the Cabinet as part of the proposals within the MTFS before they get laid before full council. So be assured, if I'm not personally delivering that message, it will be a matter of record which will be delivered to the Cabinet in due course. The point you raised, Chairman, about whether Shire grants is under consideration, the report clearly said that it's a review of the Shire grants, albeit within the detail of the report. If I can quickly find it, I think the proposal is to cease the whole of the Shire grant budget from April 2023. So my understanding, it is a review, but I do think there's further clarity to be had about the status of the overall Shire grant proposal.
Absolutely. So let's gravitate towards the word review rather than conclusive decision. That's what I'm trying to say, Mr. Payne. Yeah.
I'll certainly deliver that message back to the Cabinet.
Thank you. Mr. Bolter, anything you'd like to add, sir?
No.
That's fine. And is there anything else subsequent that you'd like to add to the medium-term financial strategy report?
If it's okay with you, Chair, I'll take you through the next couple of sections, if that's okay.
Please do, thank you.
First one is about growth, then across this agenda item. And on the revenue side, the key areas of growth are set out in paragraph 14. The biggest aspects there relate to software licensing for some of the systems we have within the department. That's offset by the removal of some previous growth in relation to the regional waste project, which is taken out there. Also, you'll see in there's some growth related to market premium that's been paid primarily to help attract and retain HGV drivers. On the waste side, we had incredible difficulty, and we're not out of the woods yet, but things have got a wee bit better, touch wood. But again, that's reflected in the growth position there. But overall, you can see that the net growth position is modest at just over 0.1 of a million. I'll just go on to the savings and SUDs, if that's all right, Chair. And looking at that table, the table under paragraph 16 summarises the position for the committee. Total savings 2.3 million over the MTFS period, of which 2 million sits within the E&T department, and you can see the split out with the other departments there. The largest savings line, as we've already heard and alluded to, is that future residual waste strategy, the 985,000. Other lines I would highlight are ET17, the review of the RHWS provision, and you'll see that goes up to a forecast of just over $500,000 over the MTFS period, and it'll include looking at options such as reducing down to 9 sites, looking at our operating hour, and there will be significant amount of work looking at those options. I would just hasten to add, obviously, firstly, the first hurdle in delivering, or the first part of the process in delivering, is the approval of the MTFS through the Cabinet and County Council process. But beyond that, for a number of our savings, such as that particular one, there will be full consultation processes, and there'll be a whole host of processes before anything could be implemented. We've already talked about the Shire grants as well. ET11 is a further RHWS related one, and that savings derived from ongoing efficiencies from when we brought in-house the Whetstone site. That was the last site that was externalised. All the other sites were run by ourselves. We brought that in 2021, and we're continuing to drive efficiencies on that operation now that we've brought it in-house. It's also an element of that is building up the reuse side of the business, and I know this committee has talked about that before. And I think we're all slightly frustrated because it's something we'd hoped to do a number of years ago. The pandemic certainly put that back. But what we do find now that we're looking at that again, it will be a slow burn. It will take a number of years to build that up. But, there's an element of reuse built into that savings line there. We've got a line that says continuous improvement, and this is a bit of a catch-all there. That's ET2 for lots of different little initiatives, again, just driving out savings across the business there. Things like digitisation of application processes, etc., which drive efficiencies. In terms of increasing income, we have initiatives within the Country Park Service, and also in terms of energy improvements, such as increasing our solar provision, etc. Savings under development, that's initiatives that we anticipate there might be or hope there might be savings in the future, but we need to do more work to establish if there is a business case and whether it's deliverable. Paragraphs 18 to 21 sets out the SUDs for these services. One of the government's resources and waste, one of those is the government's resources and waste strategies. And as we've alluded to earlier, there's a lot of things coming forward from government that will change waste collection and waste disposal as we go forward. There's opportunities, there'll be pros and cons of that, but fundamentally, in terms of waste disposal, there could be opportunities there, and we'll certainly look to maximise those when it's clear what government's mandating. Factors influencing our ability to deliver on the NTFS. I think the first one I'd highlight is staffing resource. We've gone through a few years. It's been really, really challenging, and not just in certain specialist disciplines, but even the frontline staff, etc. Say at our HWS sites, HGV drivers, that kind of thing has been really difficult. So that's absolutely critical to us being able to deliver one, our services, and two, our savings. If we have to bring in agency or external, often we are paying more. So, you know, that is doubly challenging in terms of delivering on those savings. We do look to use things like market premium and retention payments where there's a strong case for it to help us in that scenario. Another influencing factor, as you know, is government policy. We have to react to that, and sometimes there's savings, but sometimes there is additional cost in that. Things like the proposition to no longer allow us to charge for DIY waste at our RHWS sites. You know, those things will all have impacts on our ability to keep the delivery of the service within budget and to deliver savings. We'll also, the ongoing need to modernise how we operate often offers an opportunity as we digitise and automate things where we can, but there's costs involved in that as well. So, you know, but in terms of customer experience and efficiencies, we know it's the way to go, so we need to be doing that. I'll stop there. Maybe I've covered a fair bit before I go on to just the final couple of sections, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah, that was a very useful whistle stop. Thank you very much. Colleagues, members, anything that we'd like to raise at this point? Excellent. Anne, happy to carry on? Yeah, certainly. And this will be the last bit, Chair. Just looking at other funding sources and our capital programme under this remit. I mentioned earlier we received income and we make charges, which helps reduce our spend to our net position. And they're set out in paragraph 27. They range from being able to charge staff to capital when we're doing capital projects, which offsets our revenue budget, as well as fees and charges, things like trade waste income. And, you know, selling recyclable materials as well. The capital positions, that table 3 under paragraph 28, it's a modest capital programme, and you'll see the biggest areas of spend relate to improvements to our HWS, things like drainage improvements, that kind of thing. We've always got an ongoing programme of that, and also to one-off works associated with the Ashby Canal. Also worth noting the investment in decarbonising the council estate, you know, which will, you know, take us forward in our commitment. We heard Severn Trent and Anglian's commitments to net zero by 2030. We're in exactly the same position. Finally, we have a number of future capital projects that we know could be coming up over the horizon. They're not funded at the moment, but they're there for, you know, for visibility. You know, these are things that, as an authority, chances are we're going to have to find the funding for in future. I mean, in terms of delivering capital projects under the current economic situation, inflation, I would say, is the biggest challenge for us. You know, costs spiralling, really difficult to manage. And particularly, these are relatively small sums. Inflation have quite an impact on some of those projects. I will just conclude by saying that overall, the Environment, Waste and Green Agenda financial position is relatively stable with modest growth demands on it. In terms of the savings, the bulk of these will be achieved through contract efficiencies. That, you know, one that was pointed out, just under £1 million, is being driven by our contract efficiencies and reprocurements, and will continue to do that as contracts come up. And also the other aspect, as you well know, will be through service reductions. But again, I would just emphasise there will be further processes to go through before anything is finalised and implemented with that regard. I'll stop there, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. Questions, Mr. Bolter.
Thank you. Can you enlighten me, please, on this Ashby Canal reed bed, 650,000, and Ashby Canal 40,000, so it's £690,000 out of the capital programme going to one particular area. Can you enlighten me how that's come about? Because it was a trust, wasn't it, at one time?
Yep, I'll take that one. The £40,000 is an ongoing sort of maintenance budget. So it allows for ongoing repairs and that sort of thing. The 650,000 relates to the reed bed, which is basically used. Some of the water source for a section of the canal is it's basically mine water, and it has to be treated through the reed bed before it can go into the canal to make sure that the water quality is, sufficient. The reed bed is currently not working properly, so that money has been allocated to carry out works to repair the reed bed to ensure that the water quality is where it should be for going into the canal.
Mrs. Bolter, is there anything I'd like to ask you a question, if I may, if that's okay? First of all, Vicky, welcome. Thank you. When you talk about mine treatment, are we talking about a former coal mine treatment here, and how has it become our responsibility to treat the residual waste of something that would belong to Budge or the former British Coal Board? I'm asking in layman's terms, sorry, I'm just confused.
So the canals need constantly replenishing with water, essentially, because they're not a natural feature. You have to top up the water, and the source of water that's being used to top up that section of the canal is from essentially an old coal mine. So the water is being pumped up essentially out of the ground, but it has to be sort of cleaned before it's of sufficient quality to go into the canal. So it's not our responsibility to look after the water from the mine, but because we're using the water, obviously it needs to be of a sufficient quality before we can put it in.
But there's no partnership agreement with the former mine owners or anything, that there's a shared responsibility that the water that I guess they want their water to be pumped out. I'm not going to prolong the conversation too long, but if we not got a partnership agreement with whoever owned the mine, or sorry, Mr. Payne, sorry.
Yeah,
Chairman,
just to shed some light in this, it is remarkable that such a large figure within such a tight budget exists within the capital programme. Some members may not be aware, but this is a legacy issue that's been here at the Leicestershire County Council, certainly perhaps before even I got elected to the County Council. What members need to know at the moment, and a report came to Cabinet, that we're in the process of transferring our interest in the Ashby Canal over to a voluntary group who have done some amazing work in the Ashby area. Unfortunately for us, it is subject to parliamentary approval and departmental approval at parliamentary level, which requires, as I understand it, some legislation which needs to go through a process. And we all know the shenanigans that have been happening in the last few years at Parliament, which has delayed the ambition of the voluntary group in Ashby and our own ambition to transfer our interest in this canal. So it is there. Whilst it still is a liability of ours, we have to budget for it. But there have also been some previous agreements made with the Ashby volunteers. So in due course, we hope, subject to parliamentary approval, that the interest that we have will be transferred to the voluntary organisation in Ashby.
Well, all power to the Ashby volunteers. Well done for that. I just think there's sort of an irony. We're talking about the environment and clarity of water with our former guests, and then we're talking about this immediately after. So, okay, it's a legacy. Anybody want to ask or add anything? Mr. Barclay, thank you.
Why would the Ashby volunteers take on such a liability? And how are they going to meet it in future, or are they just not going to clean the water?
You'd have to ask the Ashby volunteers. I mean, they are, I'm not sure whether it's seen as technically a liability. It's a part of the heritage, and there's a community of interest to do with the Ashby Canal. But it's certainly their wish that we do transfer that section of the canal over to them. Why they would want that, you'd have to ask them those questions.
Incredible, unfathomable indeed. Mr. Harrison, thank you.
Thank you. Whilst I live in Ashby, I'm not a member chairman of that group, but I know of their existence and what they're doing, and they've successfully opened up other parts of that canal and refurbished it. So it's a major event, but it's a very, very big motivation in what they're doing, and there's lots of other support helping them. Thank you.
Mr. Harrison, I absolutely agree, and I think ethically and morally it's a fantastic project, but I think I just think it's a huge financial burden for us that perhaps they could look for other sources of income, but that's perhaps a debate for another time. Any additional comments that colleagues wish to make? Anything? So again, good luck to them, you know, substantial project. And is there anything else you'd like to add? Section 9, which is 71 to 88 on our pages, medium-term financial strategy.
No, I'd finished. Thank you, Chair.
Ewan, have we got any questions or petitions from anybody online in relation to the remarkably well paced? Thank you very much. Which brings me on to item number 10, which is Leicestershire Resources and Waste Strategy. I haven't missed anything, have I? No. Leicestershire Resources and Waste Strategy 2022 to 2050. Director of Environment, Transport, Leicestershire County Council. Director of Environment and Vicky, once again, welcome. Head of Service. And Impresi, if you wouldn't mind presenting the report, or the best parts thereof, thank you. Pages 89 to 188, colleagues, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So the purpose of the report today is to advise the committee that the public consultation on the Leicestershire Resources and Waste Strategy is now complete, and that the final strategy has now been produced and will go to Cabinet for approval in February. It is a partnership document, and our partner authorities, so the district and borough councils, will also be taking it through their approval processes within the next couple of months. So I'll just give a bit of a quick summary of the consultation and the results. I mean, members will have read the report, so I'll just summarise. The consultation was carried out for 12 weeks between January and April last year. In total, we had just over 5,000 responses to the online survey. In general, the majority of respondents, 83% of respondents, supported the vision and the pledges within the strategy. In relation to food waste collections, 65% of respondents didn't see any barriers to participating in food waste collections, but there were some concerns raised about how that might work in practice. When asked about the options that delivered the highest recycling rates and reduced carbon emissions, they were about restricting general rubbish capacity. Residents preferred the option of fortnightly collections with smaller bins rather than 3 weekly collections. And in summary, 64% of respondents agreed with the draft strategy to some extent or more. In addition to the questionnaire, we did a number of other consultation activities, including an online forum. There were various presentations to the Leicestershire Qualities Group, the parish clerks, the Youth Council for Leicestershire, and indeed there was a presentation to this committee in March last year, at which point members noted that some references to fly tipping litter within the strategy needed to be strengthened. And in fact, you can see that in paragraph 35 of the report that was one of the key themes that did come out from the consultation, was about fly tipping being an area of concern for residents. Other things to note, there was a limited understanding of the relationship between waste and climate change. So that's something that we can look at in our future communications activities. Generally, residents were enthusiastic about engagement around reducing waste, and like to be kept informed. And there's a number of other points there that you can see. In relation to changes that have been made to the final version of the strategy, the sort of minor modifications to the pledges, but the addition of a pledge, which is number 2 under paragraph 38, regarding fly tipping and litter. The other change of note is that there's been a sort of statement added around local government finance and the challenges of the current financial situation for all authorities. The strategy is accompanied by a high-level action plan, which sort of gives a bit of a route map for how the partners will deliver the vision and objectives of the strategy, and that will filter down into more detailed sort of action plans that the individual partners will take forward. So, in summary, the recommendation is that the committee notes the results of the public consultation and provides any final views on the final draft of the Leicestershire Resources and Waste Strategy. Chair.
Thank you, Vicky. That was succinct and to the point. I do have a question from Mr. Hunt. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. I understand that this has been a long time in the gestation because it's required a lot of good partnership work with our local collection authorities, and I can only congratulate officers and everybody else for actually getting it done and getting it to cabinet next month or something like that. Yeah, that's right. So in large measure, it's work that has been done, and we are seeing it through. From what I've read, some collection authorities are doing better work than others, and I think that's a question for those on district authorities. But it does remind me that we would be much better off in Leicestershire if we had one unitary authority that collected and disposed. But that's not on the agenda, I gather from the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Go over to Mr. Page. Thank you.
Yes, I actually lost my points now. Can I have that back? Thank you. My first point is really, I know there were, this is a final, and we are asking, or you asking us for comments. Now then, what happens to the comments? Because this is already a completed document, and I understand it has got to go because it can't be changed anymore, can it, in a way? So what happens if, say, for instance, it goes to the district and they say, oh, their scrutiny bodies, oh, we're not signing this off, so is this process now rigid? That's my first question. The second one is, we're talking about a waste partnership, and what I would actually very much like to see, not as part of the document, but as part of the report, that we have got the makeup of what this partnership would look like. Who's on it? How many members? How often do they meet? And how do they work? What's the process? And that's my first question, if I can come back in a minute.
Thank you, Anne.
If I can answer the first part and then hand over to Vicky in the second part, if that's all right. The question about, is this process rigid? Obviously it's been developed in partnership with the district authorities as the collection authorities, and lots of work's gone into that. Through that process, the officers from their authorities, they're duty bound to take their lead member through it to make sure that, they're comfortable with the direction, and that sets out the aspirations of each of the authorities. So in theory, hopefully we have got an agreed position. Comes to scrutiny has that ability to say, is there any key issues in it, any main concerns? That gets fed to Cabinet. So under that process, Cabinet then gets to consider, would they want to then take the, given it's a partnership document, take the opportunity, given whatever Scrutiny's comments were, to say, okay, we're not happy to sign up to this yet. We'd want to go back to the partnership to have a look again because we've got A, B or C, whatever issue or concern. So there would be an opportunity. We're hoping we wouldn't get to that, and it'd be things that could be maybe taken on board on action plans, etc., rather than the high-level strategy itself. But equally, I would say that would be the fail-safe, the kind of backstop for any key issues coming out of scrutiny, to go to Cabinet for that full consideration. I'll hand over to Vicky for the second part of the question, if that's all right, Chair.
Please do. Thank you. I do have Mr. Bolter and Mr. Harrison queued, so thank you very much, Vicky.
My question wasn't answered in relation, can we eventually see a makeup of, how it's going to work as part of the, because I know you say it's officers mainly, but how are the members represented?
Mrs. Page, can I propose that may be answered by Vicky in the next section? Thank you.
Yep. So currently the partnership's made up of, it is all the 7 district and borough councils and the county council. The city council are sort of associate members, so they're kept involved but aren't sort of directly involved in the partnership. At the moment, I think, as Anne said, it is an officer-led group where the officers go back and engage with their own lead members at their various authorities. In the past, there have been more formal sort of officer and member groups, but those don't exist at the moment. We are, once the strategy is adopted by all partners, there is a proposal that we look at how the partnership will continue to meet and to kind of deliver on the strategy going forward. But that's a kind of next step once the strategy is adopted. But yeah, the members are sort of engaged directly by the officers who've been involved in the process.
Mrs. Page, does that more directly answer your question?
Yes, and if I just may come back and then I am finished. Under the changes of the strategy, we are also raising under the pledges things like environmental crime, fly tipping, etc., which are not really the responsibility of the county council. So how are we foreseeing to dovetail that with the districts? And then the other thing is, I'm
going to stop you, Mrs. Page, because we are really moving away now, and I'm very aware that Mr. Bolter and Mr. Harrison and Mr. Payne have comments that they'd like to make about the original question that was asked.
Okay.
How would you? Is it a prompt response to that question? Sorry.
Just
sorry,
for the
Mr. Page.
Just for the benefit of Mrs. Page, so she can better understand what's before us here. There used to be this particular policy is required under the Waste and Emissions Trading Act 2003. We have a two-tier system. Mr. Hunt alluded to the prospect of a unitary authority where this policy wouldn't necessarily be needed. But as we have the structure and the setup in Leicestershire that we are required under legislation to have a partnership. Just to assure Mrs. Page that I was engaged as lead member here at Leicestershire County Council for this area of business on numerous workshops. Indeed, I recall Mr. Bolter representing with his other hat on another council at that same conference. So we do liaise as elected members along with our officers, but it is true to say that the bulk of the work, I mean, it's a heavy document and a lot of work needs to go into compiling this to sit with the officers. Having said that, this latest iteration of this policy does have 12 pledges, and there is a key focus based on the consultation that we had on fly tipping, etc. And in terms of the county council, Mrs. Page is absolutely right. The responsibility for enforcement and catching fly tipping, etc., resides with, if you like, the borough and district councils. We know them as the collection authorities. However, the Leicestershire County Council do have a liability there in that we pick up the cost of disposing of those fly tip materials. So we have to work in partnership to deal with this particular issue. It's just one example where we require a partnership agreement. There are lots of issues within the agreement that's being posed before each of the partners, not least that of funding in this current climate. And earlier on in the meeting, we heard from the Water Board saying that the Environment Act brings many opportunities. Indeed, it does, but there are also many challenges and costs associated with that, which we haven't thoroughly worked through, and which in time the partnership will have to deal with. But for all intents and purposes, we have an overarching strategy to deal with these issues as a partnership, but the responsibilities still sit with each individual authority.
Thank you, Mr. Payne, and thank you to the officers for that. I'm very conscious. Mr. Bolter, thank you.
Very briefly, Chair. Page 95, 2 or 3 weekly collection. I keep plugging on the fact that Oby and Wixon has a weekly collection of refuse and recycling, not referred to in the document whatsoever. The County Council did its exercise, and we did our own exercise on the same issue. Our respondents came back around a 90% wish to retain the weekly collection. They did not want to say 2-week or 3-week collection. So that's what we continue to do. But it's not referred to in the document, which is a shame because I keep harping about it every time, but it never gets recorded.
Mr. Bolter, are you requesting that those details are now recorded in the document? Is that what your call to action is? So, yes. Officers, is that something that response Mr. Bolter's call to action is that those details are actually included in the document?
Mr. Chairman, can I just, in response to Mr. Bolter's question, I understand, there are many members here at Leicestershire County Council that wear 2 hats. For my part, I'm just a Leicestershire County Councillor, but there are members that sit on these borough and district councils. All I'd say in response to Mr. Bolter, I know he has a responsibility at Oby and Wixton Borough Council with his other hat on, and before time, this same report will go before their cabinet or executive structure to be approved and adopted by the council. I think those comments that Mr. Bolter have made in the capacity of as an Oby and Borough councillor should be posed to the Oby and Wixton Borough Council, not necessarily the Leicestershire County Council. For our part, this is our position, and we'll come to a collective decision as to whether we see this policy fit for the Leicestershire County Council.
Mr. Bolter, without getting drawn into a contentious debate, I will allow just one more comment before I go to Mr. Harrison, who's been exceptionally patient. Thank you, Mr. Harrison.
I did say at the very beginning of this exercise, Chair, which is almost 2 years ago, is it? We started down this avenue, that Oby and Wixton's position was weekly collection. And I asked for that to be reported and put in the consultation, which was not carried out. So I'm merely carrying on the same tack that, options should have been put there to the residents of Leicestershire. What do they require? And it wasn't.
Mr. Payne, just one comment, then one from Anne, and then read Mr. Harrison.
The policy that we're looking at, which will eventually work its way through to Cabinet, has been subject to consultation, over 5,000 responses. Oby and Wixton Borough Council were a party to the policy making. Like I've just said, it's for them to either reject or accept this policy as they see fit in due course. I'm not sure when their executive will be hearing the document, but I'm sure the points that Mr. Bolter have made can be put to his own Borough and District Council, and it'll be for them to make a decision as to whether they want to accept or reject it.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. I am going to take the question or the statement from Mr. Harrison, and then Anne conclusively, if we can sort of draw a line and move on. Thank you, Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's simple. We were asked to read, understand and accept, and I'd like to move the acceptance of the report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
And is there something that you would like to add? Sorry, I did cut across you earlier.
No, I think it's been covered.
Chairman.
Mrs. Page, I will take one more comment on this. I'm quite mindful of the agenda.
Very quickly, could we just have an update, because it's important, on item 11, page 96, the partnership will continue to allocate communication budget sufficient. How much, how is it divided? And have we got anything on the food waste yet from government? Because that might be affecting us financially in the long run.
Succinctly, Mrs. Page, your question is, again, succinctly, thank you.
Item 11, page 96, point 11, communication budget, can that be explained? And page 9, and have we got an update on the food waste collection requirements from government yet? Because I've been there, it didn't work and it was very costly. So do we know anything further?
Thank you, Vicky.
In relation to Pledge 11 around communications budget, so it doesn't specify a specific budget, so each partner will continue to carry out communications activity. So that it doesn't specify a specific budget. So sort of continuation of the communications work that's already ongoing and will continue to sort of work in partnership with the districts where we can.
So how much is it now and who is paying for that? Because we are in difficult financial times, so we really need to know who is paying what and how much it is going forward.
If I could just come in that, I mean, for instance, we do joint campaigns every so often with the districts, and we'll work with our comms colleagues in the comms department. So from time to time, it's within existing teams that it'll be allocated to specific campaigns at a specific time. And that's the way we've operated for a while now, and that will continue. And I can't speak to the district arrangements or the district and borough council arrangements, but imagine it will be a continuation of that as well. So it is absorbed at the moment. So yeah, absolutely agree. We're in difficult financial times. It's work that's going on at the moment, and hopefully we can continue to do that in the moment we're anticipating we can. In terms of food waste, I could just start and then maybe Vicky could go on. Government's still at the very early stages. They will have to take through legislation on this. So we haven't got the details. We have been, officers, from authorities have been involved with workshops with DEFRA to understand, particularly in areas like ours, two-tier, where obviously it impacts on the collection authorities and it impacts on ourselves, any key barriers in terms of particularly our side of things, the contractual arrangements we have for disposal, how will that impact? So there's a long way to go on it. What I would say is there's an intention coming out of government that food waste is collected. We don't know exactly how, and for the likes of us two-tier authorities, the split of monies there, or when it will happen. There's still, it's a bit of a black hole in information at the moment, apart from the intention that it will happen at some point in the future.
Thank you. And conclusively on item agenda number 10, Mr. Chapman, thank you.
My response was just to second Ms. Harrison and say that we should just note this report at this stage, I do believe. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm quite keen, fervent to move on, if that's okay. Colleagues, I've had an external communication. Could I just ask that we turn our mobile phones off, because I understand it's a little bit distracting for some of the people who are joining us online. So I have had a message. Can we please make sure that our mobile phones are off or set to silent? I'm only recording the request I've been made. Thank you. Moving on to environmental performance report, if that's okay. Thank you very much, Mr. O'Brien. James O'Brien is joining us this afternoon. Anne Carruthers, Director of Environment and Transport, will present this report, and it is itemised on pages 189 to 216. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the annual performance report, and the year it's reporting on is 2021 to 2022. It is fairly lengthy, but I will endeavour to pick out the highlights for you. Lengthy, obviously, because it's the annual one. Before we get into the detail, just a couple of reminders. Firstly, the reporting follows the requirements we have under the ISO 14001, which is an international standard, and which we operate our environmental management system under. It's accredited to that. Therefore, there's a certain way of reporting, and we followed that. The other thing I'll remind you about, the reporting period covers the period where we're still in pandemic, and that has, as you'll see as you go through the report, markedly impacted some of the performance. Some of it's positive and some of it's negative. I'll also point you to Appendix A, which gives a really good, quick, high-level summary of performance if you wanted to refer to that one. Looking at where we're not meeting our targets, gas and biomass consumption in our buildings, that has been particularly impacted by the pandemic in the need to heat buildings, but at the same time ventilate. And the other thing that factored into our biomass boiler was out of action for a number of months. I think it was 4 or 5 months for upgrading to it. target. So we've seen a real dip there, and that's affected the next target we're not performing on, renewable energy generated as a percentage of consumption. So while things have dipped, however, we should see better progress in subsequent years. We just had to take that hit while we were upgrading the boiler. The target on percent recycled from LCC sites has improved, but it's still below pre-COVID levels, and I'm sure you understand why. We're not working in the same way as we did pre-COVID. However, we still do expect some improvements on that. For instance, things like food waste collections being reintroduced at County Hall, those will help those percentages there. Looking beyond some of our own LCC indicators externally, percentage of household waste reused, recycled and compost remains below its 50% target. It's 43.4%. We do anticipate that the new resources and waste strategy that you've just heard about and the commitments on there and some of the activity under there, as well as some of the proposals coming out of government, will begin to see some traction on that and improvements in that over the coming months and years. Water consumption per LCC full-time employee is significantly increased. This one's a bit of an anomaly, and it is based, however, on estimated billing. So we are working to obtain more accurate figures and understand why we're seeing that anomaly. It just seems to be a fairly left field one at the moment, and we're looking to try and get to the bottom of that one. The council's got 3 environmental risks with a score that are greater than 15. They all sit within the Environment and Transport Department. Paragraph 27 sets out what we're doing around those. The areas we're doing well in are and ahead of target, paragraphs 28 to 44. However, I'll note that some of those, that good performance is down to the pandemic suppressing maybe some of the activity, etc. So we're going to have to see how that goes over time as we become fully out of the pandemic. It's worth mentioning the increase in recycled aggregates in our highways work, which increased from 51% to 63%. We'll continue to try and increase this, but it can only work in appropriate schemes in terms of the type of activity that's going on and if the materials are available locally. There are, and we've already touched on this in a number of reports, a significant number of policy changes from government and regulations that will impact on performance. An example of that is the new statutory duty to produce across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland a local nature recovery strategy. We'll be the responsible authority for this. We are awaiting further guidance, but potentially it has the opportunity to influence some of our performance there. We've completed an assessment of the Council's risks in relation to climate change and identified 8 risks that are rated high. They're predominantly in highways and property services, and work is being identified and then, to address this. Just to ensure you that our environmental performance processes are robust, our environmental management system was externally audited and we retained our international standard accreditation with only 1 minor non-conformity. We also had 6 internal audits, and again, there was no major non-conformities again. So, again, gives us a level, and hopefully you, a level of assurance in terms of the quality of what we're doing, and as I say, just give you that level of confidence. Just to summarise, in terms of environmental performance, we have 10 green indicators and 7 red, largely stable position. A number of indicators, however, significantly impacted by the COVID pandemic. And the other thing that puts a significant influencing factor on it is the changing legislation and government policy that's on the horizon in a number of areas. Only other thing worth mentioning is the Net Zero Strategy and Action Plan. Again, real opportunity to see progress across a number of indicators as we go into in delivery of that, as well as really maximising on the increasing public awareness of environmental matters. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. That's insightful précis and summary. Thank you very much. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Mr. O'Brien. Thanks for joining us today, James. Questions, thoughts and opinions. Mr. Chapman, if we will, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question on some of the figures there of electricity usage, water usage, and all that. And the fact how we're doing as a council, has anything been factored into for the people who are working from home that they're using a bit of extra electricity in this house, that has a bit of water, a bit of extra recycling into our figures as the county council, please? Thank you.
I'll start now, maybe hand over to the experts if that's okay. In terms of our county council, say energy consumption, no, it won't. We don't factor into the home usage. But when it comes to, we have Leicestershire-wide emissions targets, it will be factored in that, assuming the home working happens in Leicestershire. If it's a different county, it would be their emissions. So, you know, overall the picture, that's how it would be represented, unless James wants to correct me or add to.
Mr. O'Brien, can I ask you to put your mic?
Apologies. Yeah, I can add to that, and Michael can add a bit further potentially because he's leading on the greenhouse gas work that we do. So at the moment, as Anne said, we don't currently include emissions from people's homes, but as part of our net zero 2030 work, we are looking at what's called scope 3 emissions, which is emissions that happen outside direct relationship of the organisation. And we are looking at if and how we could include those emissions within our reporting. As you can imagine, it's very difficult to work out how much emissions happen in people's homes. So we'll have to look at that in terms of the exact mechanicals of that and the accuracy of the information.
Mr. Chapman, thank you.
Yeah, because obviously there's an offset of that because we've got that little bit of extra usage of electricity and water people who would normally work in the office, offset against their vehicle movements of travelling to the office. So I'm actually wondering if it would be an actual beneficial figure and reduce our actual footprint as a council by people working at home, one against the other. So that was just a comparison more. Thank you.
Yeah, again, we've done an estimate of that. Again, it's very difficult because we don't know. So on average, a person would need to travel about 100 kilometres, I believe, the study that we did, in order to offset the emissions from their homes in terms of a commute. So we need to understand the geography of where our employees live and work that out, you know, so that's another big piece of work.
Is that per day, per week, or per year?
Per day, I think it was, yeah.
Per day?
Yes, yeah, 100 kilometres. Yeah, it does vary depending on the energy efficiency of the house and so on. So yes, yeah.
Well, 100 kilometres per day?
Yes. Commute, total commute.
I'd get another job. Yeah. Surely, without being rude.
That was based on current available information.
Yeah, that's a disturbingly high figure. Colleagues, associates, before we go too much further on, and I'd like to, excuse my ignorance, I'd like to just congratulate you on retaining our accreditation. I think that was an important thing that we rudely skipped over. I apologise for that. So thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. O'Brien, for James? And sir, I didn't get to introduce you. I apologise.
So as Michael said, I'm the Senior Carbon Reduction Officer.
And Michael. Mr. Hunt, thank you.
Just a quick couple of points. First of all, on our own operations, what we do in the authority has always been brilliant, and we're continuing to be on target to meet all our targets there. As far as the household waste reused, recycling, composted, that's largely we are victims or beneficiaries of the collection authorities again. And what struck me, it may have struck other members if they'd seen the Q&A that I put before the committee at the beginning, that we are exporting a huge amount of our recycled or recyclates, and we have, particularly in Charnwood, a particularly bad record in contamination of recyclers. So there's things to do there that we can lean on our friends in the local authorities. As regards the net zero, I do think we've put down too many actions to try and track, and I hope, you know, in a year's time when we come back to look at it, we can really home in on the essentials. I did see BIFA, the big waste companies, net zero report. Is actually very easy to read, and very focused on the strategic stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Do any of the officers want to respond or add anything to what Mr. Hunt said? Thank you, Anne.
I would just think I've noted, thank you very much, and definitely some comments worth taking away and considering.
Thank you. Are we satisfied that concludes item 11? So we can move on. Great, thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. We're going to move on now to item 12. And again, I want to thank you for the paced way that we've gone through the agenda this afternoon. And this is under the theme of greenhouse gas emissions. And it's the report for 21-22. In terms of your packs, it's pages 217 and 238. Mr. Bolter, I appreciate that you still haven't got your pack and you're borrowing one, so we'll take that on board. And again, in praise your summary, and if you'd like to take us through this with the support of James, that would be really useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, the annual greenhouse gas report for 2021-22, and obviously reports on the authority's progress to our commitment to net zero by 2030. Overall, our emissions were 71% lower than the baseline year. However, this is 7.4% higher than the previous year. So we're doing well overall, but we have gone up. I have already said in the previous item, and I'm sure you'll picked up, the main reason for this is the return of more business as usual after the pandemic, etc., which significantly suppressed a number of areas of emissions. Despite that, the emissions rate is still 13% lower than pre-pandemic, so we are still making progress. Biggest increase in emissions is from business mileage, as you would absolutely anticipate, our fleet area and the heating, buildings heating. Gas and fuel use in buildings increased by 10%, partially driven by the biomass boiler being out of action, which I've already covered. Similar increase in fleet emissions due to that returning of services, particularly in areas like, for instance, SEN transport, which we stood down, it wasn't needed, and adult social care transport, etc., during the pandemic. Electricity consumption fell slightly at 3%, and we saw an 8% decrease in energy from traffic signals and street lighting. Both that's coming through because of greening of the grid. So, you know, it's our electricity source that's driving those emissions there. We do, however, and particularly for street lighting, have ongoing programs of trimming and dimming, you know, dimming the intensity, etc., which, you know, to continue to reduce emissions there. Business mileage saw that big increase, it was 67%. Again, though, that's still lower than in pre-pandemic levels, at just under 30% lower than that. I've talked about the water consumption element and the matter of estimated billing, because we've seen that change there. Operational waste from the authority increased by 103%. Again, standing up of services really is the explanation behind that. If I look at renewable energy, we generated 115,000 kilowatt hours into the grid from renewables, saving 24 tonnes of CO2 equivalent. We did see a bit of reduction, however, in solar exported, and it's probably due to factors such as weather conditions, as well as degradation of the solar equipment. Just as it gets older, it becomes less efficient, etc. Overall, 10% of our energy is energy used from on-site renewables. That avoids just over 350 tonnes of CO2 equivalent. And overall, though, that's 3.5% of the council emissions. I was interested, I don't know if you picked up earlier, Severn Trent talked about 51% of their emissions was generated, you know, they generated that. So we're still a long way to go on that one. The full report is appended if you want the real detail. I think overall it's fair to say we've got some positive progress, but a number of the targets still got to consider to return to normal, whatever normal will be. So we will need to continue to track those and look carefully and do more work to make sure they're going in the right direction. Thank you, Chair.
And I thought it was a very positive and progressive report. And once again, on behalf of this group, congratulations on the progress made and maintaining that 15%. Excellent. Some pleasing decreases there as well. Colleagues, Mr. Bolter, thank you.
Quickly, Chair, we already said that the efficiency of some of these equipment deteriorates with time. Have we got any renewal programs in place to replace them at the appropriate time when the efficiency gets too low? And if so, where's it in the budget?
Michael, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, our solar PV panels, so they're the panels that are on buildings such as County Hall, they now have a maintenance contract, so they'll be reviewed and monitored to check that they are still producing the solar that we want them to produce, and where possible they'll be renewed or parts replaced.
Thank you, Michael. Mrs. Page, thank you.
Very quick one, page 332. It says council's emissions from office waste increased by 102.5% since 2021 can be attributed to the return of council services and operation, including the use of council buildings and facilities. Now, I can't really get my head around that because return to work from staff is not even at 50%. So what are you measuring it on? And, you know, it is a very, very high percentage. So where's that waste coming from and what are you measuring? What's the baseline it's being measured on?
James, are you okay to answer that for us?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, so that links to my previous report where we reported on our performance around our total waste. So due to COVID, we've seen, I can't remember the exact figures, but I think it's 65% reduction in our waste. But as this report is for 21-22, we've seen a return and therefore of more activity in the buildings and in our operations, and therefore our waste has gone up. And that's why you're then seeing 102% increase in our the carbon emissions from that waste.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. So the figure is not really relating.
Yeah.
I think we'll see figures like that for a little while yet as well, James. Thank you. Colleagues, anybody else want to add or ask anything in relation to the greenhouse gas emissions report, which I personally thought was very favourable? Are we okay to move on? Thank you. Thank you, officers, and thank you, Michael. Okay, thank you. So item number 13 now, which is the Leicestershire County Council Parks and Bylaws. And we'd like to welcome to this committee Mr. Richard Hunt, who is Head of Catering, Hospitality and Country Parks. Richard, a very good afternoon to you and thanks for joining us this afternoon. Did you bring any cakes? Because we've been here for about 6 hours and I've lost 2 stone.
Alas not, alas not. I thought we were being encouraged by public health not to be eating cakes at work, aren't we? So no, I'm afraid not today.
I'm on my 2023 Keep Fat campaign and you're not helping. So thank you. A little bit of humour. We're flagging here, aren't we? Richard, thank you. So, and this is on pages 239 to 254.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry I can't bring a scintillatingly exciting paper to you today. This is, I'm afraid, a little bit dull, but I will do my best to keep it as lively as possible. So the paper you've got with you and the appendices set out a proposed reform to the bylaws of our country parks and open spaces estate in the county. These were last updated in 2003. They were considered by Development Control and Regulatory Board, who approved moving to a formal 12-week consultation, which we are now in the middle of. And today we're seeking the views of this committee on the proposed new bylaws. The main changes are listed in point 6 and relate to better defining electrically powered cycles on our parks, prohibitions on barbecues, camping stoves and sky lanterns and fireworks, greater clarity over items such as model boats, model cars, aircraft and drones, certain prohibitions and restrictions on dogs, particularly in areas including playgrounds and areas where dogs will be requested to be on leads, and also prohibition and clarity on flyers, graffiti, musical entertainment and firearms. The consultation started on the 1st of December 2022, and my apologies, I made a New Year error in the paper. I wrote 2023, and runs for 12 weeks. Once the consultation closes, and once we have had a response back from the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, DEFRA and Natural England, we will return to DCRB and then on to full council, as is the prescribed route that bylaws have to go. So in conclusion, we're asking for your views on these proposed bylaws, or any other questions on them.
Mr. Hunt, are you actually asking for our views on these today, conclusively? You need them today, because
the consultation's open for a while yet. So either any views today or any views to be submitted to us as part of the consultation process, absolutely fine either way.
And please excuse the omission if I didn't hear. When's the deadline before that you would like to have?
So it's going to be basically the end of this month, ideally, to have all responses.
The end of January.
The end of January. So it's the beginning of February when the consultation closes. So it's a 12-week consultation.
Okay. There's quite a lot.
Sorry,
there.
Forgive me. Through the end of February. The end of February is the end.
That's slightly more generous, and in inverted commas, doable. Mrs. Page.
Thank you, Richard. And I've seen it and done it all, I think, in October when it came to the DCRB. So I really haven't got any more comments. I think we made comments and I think they're reflected here. However, when I was driving over today, basically, I heard on the radio some silly comment, and bear with me, it was that government is giving permission to wild camping for residents in public parks. Now, if this is happening, can you incorporate, and once you know that, within that, and you're looking vacant at me, probably you don't know. So can we put just a note into it that we look into that and then reflect it into the bylaws in case that has an impact and it is wild camping?
Mr. Hunt, may I advocate on your behalf on Mrs. Page in this? I know to the document to which you refer, Mrs. Page, and it's not broad brush. It is wild camping on National Trust property within identified parametered zones. So it's not like you can just pitch up your tent anywhere. And I'm not entirely sure that the fact that it comes under the National Trust, that it's actually within the interest of the County Council for discussion. Sorry to shut you down, but I just wanted, before we started to go down.
I just wanted to put that on record in case it would affect us.
It's National Trust properties within identified specific zones.
Then I've got nothing else to say.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to Mr. Bolter, if that's all right, sir. Thank you.
Yes, for once, I agree what's before us this afternoon, Chairman. I think it's vitally important we get some legislation down about electric propelled appliances, being put away carefully, and also about drones and about sky lanterns and balloons, any other things that goes up. So I'm happy with the report as it is, and I hope that we can all agree on that and move forward and get it in place as soon as possible.
Well, I'm a model RC enthusiast. I'm going to sit this one out, this discussion. So, Mr. Payne.
Yes, I'm just intrigued. I'm going to turn to the other side now and just pose a question, if I may. Should these prohibitions go ahead, how are they going to be enforced?
So this is always a delicate balancing act, it's fair to say. And the way we work on our parks is that our rangers are not there to be policemen or security guards. Our rangers are there to work with the public for the benefit of our parks. The bylaws give us a tool to help us with the enforcement. We would not anticipate our rangers will be wandering around with copies of these bylaws to demonstrate to people who are breaking them in some way, things like that. It gives us an ability to follow up repeat offenders and people who are not behaving in ways that we would like them to behave on our sites. But we're not intending on using these bylaws as part of a rigorous regime of enforcement on our parks going forwards.
In response, Mr. Hunt, there's a quite broad section of the voting populace there that we could graze, including dog owners and all sorts. So yeah, I can imagine that we should perhaps approach this with some degree of sensitivity. But I agree with Mr. Payne's question about how is it enforceable, because I can imagine the revenue in trying to enforce this would be huge. Yeah, okay. Do we really have the budget to follow people around to see if their dogs are on a lead is what I'm asking, really. So
I think the point is more that it gives us the ability to have a conversation with somebody that informs them they are breaching the bylaws, and then at the end of the process, if should we need to, we have the ability to levy a fine if required. But I very much doubt we would ever get to that. Certainly, I don't believe we've got to that point since the last load of bylaws in 2003. We've always been able to use the bylaws as part of having a conversation rather than having to reach that end point on the journey of moving to fining or something like that.
No, I understand. And I think all frameworks are useful. Colleagues, Mr. Harrison, thank you.
Chairman, just very briefly, I presume they would be published on parks close by entrances, so people, you've got something to refer to, because I think that's quite important, really, because if you're walking around, so I know it's rule so-and-so, it's this and that classification, whereas if it's published on a board, then it's there and people, you can refer them to the board and they can wander around and have a look and confirm it. That's all I'm saying, trying to think of making it easier.
No, Mr. Harrison, you're quite right, because the public would be well within their rights to contest or protest if there was no identification of what the restrictions were. So I thoroughly agree, and I can imagine, Mr. Hunt, that you've taken that into consideration, that the use of the park and the expectations of the park users would be clearly identified. Otherwise, constituents will be well within their right to say, nobody told me I couldn't, therefore I do. OK, thank you. Mr. Hunt, thank you.
I will spend the weekend going through the minor details so I can make my personal comments in due course. Should I have any?
Thank you.
Electric bags.
Thank you. Colleagues, officers, is there anything else anybody would wish to add to this? No. Well, sorry to disappoint you, because I thought we'd all be having tea together and perhaps booking a Premier Inn today, but that's not going to happen now. Takes me to item number 14, which is date of the next meeting. So our next meeting, when we'll convene again, is scheduled to take place on Thursday, the 2nd of March, at the normally scheduled time of 2 p.m. Okay, and finally, item 15, any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent? I don't have any. And as I said earlier, there are no urgent items. So at approximately 3:40, I'm going to draw this meeting to a close, if that's okay. Thank you. Thank you.